Bushwhacks were some of the worst days I've ever had in the mountains, or life, really.
Whereas Panther Mountain is totally opposite. It's a mountain on top of a crater.
I think the weather challenges on this incident were particularly difficult.
It was really the development of New York State. Catskills were responsible.
Now you're listening to Inside the Line, the Catskill Mountains podcast.
So usually we'd have to come in with the intro, which is a little too metal, but I can't really get it to project over this. So we'd have usually an intro that would say, "Welcome to Inside the Line, the Catskill Mountains podcast."
Who came here for the intro music? Just raise your hand. Okay, we have a few honest people in
Got
the
it.
room. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's actually my wife playing the guitar.
No. All right, so welcome to episode 176 of Inside the Line, the Catskill Mountains podcast. Tonight we are here live from the Mountaintop Historical Society. We're going to have a bunch of guests here. We're going to talk about the history of the Mountaintop Historical Society, railroad, stuff like that. But first I wanted to, apparently I've been listening and chatting a lot with ChatGPT. So I had them I had ChatGPT make me an intro for this. So
Well, that explains what I read earlier.
Exactly.
Okay. 'Cause I knew this wasn't your penmanship. So
this is good, though. This is what they did was good. It's kind
all
of
right.
tall
So
flavor.
we're going to judge by the crowd reaction just how good it is. Okay. So here we go. Can I have a drum roll? Anyone? We have a drummer in the audience. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. So we're live tonight from the Mountaintop Historical Society in Haines Falls, just a stone's throw away from beautiful Catskill Falls, where half the tourists forget to bring the water and the other half forget how gravity works. Tonight's panel is stacked like a Devil's Path hike itinerary. We got Cindy LaPierre here, Dee Dee Turns-Thorpe, Catskills historians who know more about this region than Gaia GPS ever will. Robert Titus is here too, our favorite geologist and rock whisperer. If you've ever tripped on a root and cursed the ground, Bob can tell you what that glacier that came from. There it is. Paul LaPierre from the Empire State Railway Museum is bringing steam stories and maybe a few squeaky whistle imitations. And Bob Gildersleeve, chief archivist here, has probably read every postcard, map, and newspaper for the last 150 years. Twice. Yeah. So whether you're listening to this from a lean-to, a parking lot, or stuck behind a slow driver on Route 28, thanks for joining us. Let's roll back the years, kick some historical dirt, and see what stories we can give up.
So I suppose now we should just turn the rest of it over to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so we're going to leave now. Thank you.
It's not bad. It did a good job of tying in everything.
I don't see you got a standing ovation.
Yeah.
So all right, we'll move along.
So thank you, the Mountaintop Historical Society, for hosting us. Big thank you to Ryan Penning. He's the owner of Camp Catskill. He hooked us up and he coordinated everything with this. Definitely fun. It's going to be a good night. Jessica Kimmel, she kept in contact with me through I'm guessing it's either 100 emails or something like that, of back and forth, maybe one sentence to each other. Yes, no. We kept it together. So it was good. So Seth, thank you, Jessica. Also David Van Dyke for coming in. Where is he? He left. Oh, George Van Dyke. Sorry. That was ChatGPT. It wasn't me. George for helping me out, let me set up previously and taking time off to let me come on it. Also, thank you to all these people for this lame podcast for coming in. Let's really appreciate guys coming in for this. So we're going to go over some topics that have been in the news for a little bit. So apparently Goodman Mountain up in the Adirondacks is closed because of a bull moose standing around. Anybody hear about that? No. Well, Tracy has. So apparently for 4 or 5 days, this bull moose right off of the trail, probably 10 feet off of the trail, has just been standing there and laying down and standing there. So Goodman Mountain is the fire tower, beautiful spot, and there's just been this bull moose that is just sitting there, and people have been concerned, is this bull moose protecting an area? Is it going to get aggressive? Is it not? So the DEC decided to shut it down, and it's been shut down for 3 or 4 days right now. And I'm just wondering, like, it's a moose. It's not very new up in the Adirondacks, but they're starting to progress more from New Hampshire into the Adirondacks. So what does this mean for us? Is the mountain lions up down here are they closing all the trails that they're going to be flying around up here? What do you think on that?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I have to sit up here with a straight face and talk about mountain lions, but let's see if I can pull it off. I think the DEC is on top of it. They do have that scientific team out collecting DNA to, authenticate the mountain lion species. Maybe the non-hikers in the group aren't aware that there is like a surge in the mountain lion population. Any of you folks, have you heard that? Yeah. You're nodding your head. See, they're in agreement. So I think it is. We're verifying it here today on the live podcast that there are, in fact, Danny, don't shake your head. Danny, go back to your car. That there are, in fact, mountain lions thriving in the Catskills. So they have to shut them down because of mountain lions. That's fine.
What do you think about the bull moose, though? Bull moose.
Oh, the bull moose?
Do you think that's like a little aggressive by the DEC, or
to shut it down?
Yeah.
I'm not going to criticize the DEC.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. We want to keep friends with the DEC.
I assume they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool to hear that, though. Like, when was the last time we've seen a moose? I wouldn't say aggressively in that area. You don't really see moose very often in New York State. The one was traveling from, I think, the Hudson Valley all the way up to like Saratoga Springs, which it was caught running with cars on the side of the road. It sounds pretty fantastic to see. So it's just really cool thing that happened in New York State. And are we going to see them more often?
Frankly, I think it'd be exciting if you went out hiking and there was the possibility of seeing a moose. Okay?
Yeah.
That wouldn't be so bad.
That would be fun.
Okay.
Also, so what about this guy I noticed?
Yeah.
Did you write this down?
So those of you who use Gaia, please know that they posted on their website that they're undergoing scheduled maintenance on June 17th from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. During this time, login and web applications will be down. So if you rely on Gaia, don't go hiking on June 17th between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which I think is 2 hours behind us. So I think the only person that would be out at that time would be Tom Hoos
and me
looking for a sunset. And you?
Tuesday.
Looking for a bull moose? Okay.
It's Tuesday. Right. I go hiking Tuesdays, but I won't be out that late. That's 8 p.m. and 6 p.m. And I don't use Gaia anyway. So, well, sorry.
All right, let's move along. I'm turning the page.
So next, also,
Joanne's getting a little sleepy.
Yeah, when I was up at Balsam Lake, I was looking down from the fire tower, and I noticed that the balsams are doing really good, sprouting a lot of new thorns or whatever they're called. Growth, yes. And, I haven't seen this in a very long time. I don't know if anybody's noticed that, maybe the rain has projected this new growth that we've had up there. On your hikes, have you noticed any like changes with the rain that is like making stuff go a little bit?
Yes, the change I noticed in my most recent hike, for those who are listeners, is how wet the trails are and how much water there is. So maybe the trees are going through a growth spurt, but I've been so focused on making sure that I don't step into like a mud sinkhole, I haven't noticed.
It's all part of hiking, man.
Yeah, I know it's all part of hiking, but I don't want to be swallowed by the endless mud pit of the Catskills.
True.
And then the people at the Historical Society, have some news article from the podcaster who died in the sinkhole in 2025.
The podcaster did a live podcast died.
Wasn't seen again. That's how bad he was.
Yeah. But I was just noticing that, and I thought it was pretty cool that we'd see thicker stuff. And then it leads to another topic that who's here has hiked Balsam Mountain, of course. And everybody in the back. You know the viewpoint? Have you seen recent pictures of the viewpoint, how much of growth that it has? I would project in the next 2 to 3 years, the viewpoint at Balsam Mountain will be gone.
Is that a subtle suggestion that somebody goes up there with the appropriate? No,
not at all.
No.
I mean, that's an amazing viewpoint. That was my first 3,500 hike. But just the fact that, you know, it's iconic view looking down into the
So let's have a show of hands. We're going to do an impromptu survey. Those of you who think the DEC should actively
You're saying it that way.
cut
DEC.
trees to maintain a viewpoint, raise your hands. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. That's
a
are
lot.
you like half in or are you all the way in? Okay.
All the way
4, 5. Nobody. One
at
in the
least in
second
the
row. I'm up to
teens.
6. I see Josh. And who's your date tonight, Josh?
This is my date, Rachel.
Oh, Rachel Jean, the Gypsy Queen. So I'm up to 10, 11, 12. Rose and Danny's shaking his head. But I think that's the majority. I think the majority is okay with the DEC
Are you?
maintaining. Why not? Why not?
I mean, there's some places that they have done. I mean, Slide. I remember Slide 8 years ago didn't have that viewpoint up top. It was starting to grow in, and they chopped
So
down
is
that.
the harder question not maintaining the viewpoints, but why not creating them? Because surely at some point in time, there was nothing but viewpoints in the Catskills. There was no trees at a certain point in time, and then vegetation started growing, and that vegetation progressed into like trees that obscured the views. So what do you think? Should the DEC create viewpoints in the Catskills? Let's do it again, folks. Show of hands. Yes.
Yeah, it's the same
1,
question.
2, 3, 4.
I mean, I'm pretty sure they would
5,
be.
6, 7, 8, 9.
You don't have
Danny's
to
got both hands up now, and he's nodding his head profusely. Yeah, I think people want that. I think people want to hike mountains and see views.
Correct.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Just
and I don't think it really ruins the habitat. So
I wouldn't say that if it
let's
was previously
petition. Let's
there.
petition the DEC viewpoints. That's what people want. Okay.
Thank you, Ted.
Glad we had this group meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like that, doesn't it? With you asking everybody, it sounds like this is like a panel or something.
It is. This
not a
is
podcast.
like American democracy in action. You know, town hall meeting right here
That's what it sounds like.
at the
town hall
old
meeting.
railroad station.
All right, so we shot the stuff for a little bit right there, so that was good. So I want to give a big shout out to the monthly supporters. If I call your name, stand up if you're here, which I don't think anybody is. Jeff Jotz, Vicky Ferreira, Mikey S., John Comiskey, Summit Seekers, Desert City Radio, Betsy A., Denise W., Tom H., Vanessa, Jim C., and Eric. Thank you guys for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. Also want to thank you, the sponsors of the show. Outdoor Chronicles Photography. So Molly specializes in outdoor photography, and she'll immortalize your moments amidst the stunning landscapes of the Catskills, Adirondacks, and White Mountains. She'll craft timeless images that reflect your unique bond in nature's grandeur. Embark on an unforgettable photographic journey with Outdoor Chronicles Photography. Also, Trailbound Project. Check them out. Our expert-led hiking and backpacking education programs offer unparalleled outdoor experiences. Whether you're a beginner or seasoned adventurer, join us for essential skills, explore stunning trails, and connect with nature. Or just veg with a mountain lion. Somebody put that in there. Start your journey today with Trailbound Project and unlock the wonders of the great outdoors. Good job, Ted. All right, so who's outdoors? Who went outdoors today? Tracy, come on up. We'll get Tracy first. And what's your name?
This is what
Paul? Okay. Come on up. Grab a microphone.
and we don't have Tom Who's here, who we've named this segment after. Where's Tom?
I don't know where Tom is. He said he was gonna be here.
Must be outdoors.
He must be outdoors. He probably is. No,
Yes,
no.
you have
Just
to hold it.
speaking mic. So what did you do today? What were you up to?
I hiked here, the rail trail, to the viewing platform.
And what was your thoughts?
It was beautiful. It was foggy. It was rainy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was peoply.
People. That's pretty normal there. But you said something about people were actually swimming.
People were swimming 10:30 this morning. Cold, rainy. People were swimming in the falls, screaming,
Interesting.
being kids, being unsafe, not following the laws. You know, all that stuff.
This is why we like bushwhacking.
Yeah.
But it's still beautiful.
It was
Water
beautiful.
was flowing nicely?
Yeah.
Nice. Did you go down to Bastion Falls and back?
No.
Oh, okay.
I literally just went to look, and then the parking lot was full up there.
Yeah.
So we turned
Already?
Yeah.
10:30 on a
10:30 on a
cloudy
cold,
day.
rainy morning. So we came back.
Wow. Cool. That sounds fun. I mean, I was,
It was nice.
thinking about doing that, but I slept in, and then I came and set up for this. So I've been to Catskill Falls so many times that it's just one of those hikes that is great on a Tuesday morning with nobody there. And especially with the high water flow, it's just a beautiful hike. It's a fantastic time. So excellent. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tagging us in the show.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Tracy.
You're welcome.
All right. Who else was outdoors today?
Who's willing to admit that they went hiking and then get called up here to answer some questions?
Joanne wants to come up. Fine. Come on up. Joanne can talk about her recent hikes in the past 3 days that she's done, probably like 50, 60 of them.
According to what Joanne told me, she was all over this morning. That's why she's walking so slowly.
Yeah, right? She's got done 8 miles today. So what were you up to?
This was a perfect opportunity for me to do my trail maintenance because I have the escarpment trail from Layman's Monument to Harding Road. So I was third car in the parking lot, which is pretty early for me on Saturday. But my trail is in pretty good shape. So finished the maintenance and then I went over to Catskill Falls because you kind of have to, it's right there. But I went all the way down to Bastion Falls and it's...
Did you go in the water?
I did not.
Oh.
I did not.
So how long have you been maintaining the trail there?
2 years.
2 years? Have you seen a increase, decrease in maintenance? I would say trash and stuff like that, with the drier weather we had last year, I'm guessing people got out more. So do you think there was
I think that section of trail is just really for the hardcore escarpment people who are, it's easy to maintain because it gets a lot of foot traffic from all the through people. But this morning, as far as trash goes, I picked up 1 dog poop bag and 1 cigarette. They're just
fantastic.
Really
a smoking dog.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so it was really clean. So yeah,
it's good. Being a trail maintainer, I've been a trail maintainer ever since 2015. So I can say that that one time during COVID it got really crazy, and then as I always said, social media and the internet can be a double-edged sword. As more people came here, more people littered and stuff, but then also the word got out about volunteering, and then more people would volunteer, and we would have more people being inspired to volunteer and stuff. Thank you for volunteering. So that section's an awesome section going over there. How's the wildflowers?
The views were amazing this morning because of the rain. The clouds over the cloud view with Catskill High Peak and Round Top were fantastic.
How are the wildflowers? Wow.
Mountain laurel is probably a week away from blooming, so there wasn't a lot in bloom right now. But give it another week or two, it should be really nice.
So give it another week or two when it rains again on the weekend. For what is that? 31 straight weeks? Yeah, 31 straight weekends.
Who's keeping track?
I know, right? Everybody's depressed in here. So, well, thank you, Joanne.
No
appreciate it, and thank you for volunteering once again.
And you can pick up your consolation prize.
Yeah, there's stickers over there if anybody wants any stickers as well. So who wants to come up? Rachel?
What's up?
You were down in the Smokies. You want to come up real quick?
We need to get you on tape. You just can't shout it out from the audience.
For anybody who doesn't know, this is kind of like our platform that we go through the show. We have the guest. We have the guest on, and most of the time people tag us in outdoor adventures and stuff, and we'll chat about it. And it'd be great to hear some people do this hike, and then some people do that. They're all over the place. So Rachel was recently down in the Great Smoky Mountains. So
that was awesome.
It's fantastic. It looked beautiful.
It was my first national park that I've ever been to because my parents were not very outdoorsy people at all. So I took a trip with my girlfriend. We were down there for a week, 5 nights, 4 days. Went to different dispersed backcountry campsites, and then we had a couple nights at a regular campground, which was fun. And then the last night we went to a KOA, which was amazing because they had a pool and a hot tub, and that was exactly what you would want after
and those
hiking.
Are cheap, right?
Oh, it was so cheap. I mean, I want to say probably $80. You have to pay, I don't know, some registration.
$80 to stay at a KOA?
Yeah.
It has electricity though and bathrooms.
But you're in a tent. You're in a tent.
Yeah.
Okay, so $80 for a
set
4 by 8.
Set up my hammock pretty much.
Whoa.
That's pretty much, yeah. If it has the right trees.
Right. So now, what are your thoughts on the Smokies, like compared to up here?
It's probably, if you know anything about the Smokies, it's like one of the highly regulated parks, probably one of the most highly regulated parks, which I don't really understand why, being that like the Appalachian Trail goes right through it, and obviously from March to, I want to say, November, they probably have foot traffic from Appalachian Trail hikers. But here's the kicker. I have to register as a person that's going to visit the park. I have to get a parking permit if I have a car. I have to have a backcountry campsite registration. That's a fee as well. And then you have to make a reservation at every single one of the places that you stay. That has to be accounted for. So if I go and stay at a shelter, there's two right off the AT. One is Mount Collins, one's the Icewater Springs shelter. I would actually, having a reservation, would be more welcome in the shelter than the Appalachian Trail thru hiker would be. And that blew my mind. Like, I brought my hammock with me with every intent to like not sleep with a whole bunch of random strangers, because I would be giving the thru hiker the option to not have to set their stuff up, because they're thru hiking. They got to get up the next morning and go. I mean, in my head, it makes sense, but maybe doesn't make sense to the park rangers. I will say the rangers that we did encounter were super, super knowledgeable, and I don't want to say aggressive, but like definitely really more along the lines of telling you, like, I don't recommend that you go this much further on the trail if you don't have more than 2 liters of water on your person. And if there's people walking by that literally don't have anything, and they're like, you can probably go to that Arch Rock formation 1.5 miles down, but I don't think it would be wise to go any further. And it wasn't mean, but was pushy that you should probably listen to him. So it was nice. It was nice.
Did you listen?
Well, I confirmed how much water I had, sir.
Yeah.
I did listen.
That's national parks are like that all the time, but I've never heard of getting like a permit to be at every parking spot down there.
That's crazy.
Well, I think the Smokies are the most visited national park in America.
I think
Acadia. I think Acadia.
I think the Smokies are very well traveled.
Yeah.
So, had you had any experience before this overnight camping?
Yeah. Me and I think I told you possibly that I did the escarpment trail last summer, and it was funny enough the same weekend that they did the escarpment run. It was really poorly timed on my part. The third day, we kind of had to like rush it to get off of that last campsite at North Mountain. Was it North Mountain? That was kind of a bum rush, more or less.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the one thing I do want to say about like the Smokies, they have Kauai, which you mentioned.
Did I say that right?
Kauai, I think it's called. Yeah, you're not supposed to say Clingman's Dome anymore.
Yeah,
it's
not
controversial. So that was really amazing. I guess it's also a controversial place because it's like a structure that they built that makes it accessible to people that otherwise wouldn't be able to access it. So you can think of it in that way, but then other people are like, well, you're putting a structure on top of a mountain, so it's not really natural, it's not wilderness anymore. So there's always that back and forth conversation in the community, which is interesting. And then we did Mount LeConte, which was quite the adventure. The highest I've ever been, which is 6573, which is higher than anything I think we have in New York, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
54.
So it was definitely, you could feel elevation the last 1,000 feet for sure. I was going a little crazy. But what was cool about it is at the top of this mountain, there is a lodge, and it is accessible. I believe from a shorter hike, we took the longer way because we wanted to do the hike that we did, which was the Alum Cave Trail, by the way, that takes you up to Mount LeConte. And what's really cool about the lodge is you could stay there. They provide food. And how do you think they get everything up there?
Probably helicopter.
Llamas. Pack
llamas.
I was going to say pack mules.
Pack llamas.
Yeah.
And they
Interesting.
live up there. It's the coolest thing to see them bringing everything up and down. And they do it along this trail called the Grotto Falls Trail, which is like, if you know what a grotto is, it's like a beautiful, picturesque kind of, I don't want to say, like an oasis, but almost a swamp at the same time. Like those types of vegetation, you would probably say. I'm probably like 100% wrong, but I'm not a biologist here.
No.
So you're not a marine biologist?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Just
Do you
for
want
the
to
record.
reconsider your relationship now, Josh, knowing that? All right, he's gonna mull
a
it
fraud.
over, get back to you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, I was gonna say, well, since I'm up here, I haven't done any hikes since the Smokies. Just was so encompassed with that entire trip. But I do have plans to go do on Juneteenth. I have off work, so I'm gonna go do Slide, Wittenberg, and Cornell.
Sweet.
Cool.
Yeah,
Sounds
that's
fun.
my plan.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming up.
Thank you.
I'm glad
Thank you
had
for
a good
having me, you
time.
guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to mention that Tom Hoos went out. He proved me wrong on my questionnaire of his sunset hike that he had. I didn't think Twin had a west-facing area, but apparently it did. So he went and did a nice sunset hike on Twin Mountain. And he tagged us.
And posted a cool photo.
Oh, we always post good photos. It's crazy. So, buy us a hard cider to support the show. If you think we're doing a good job, go and buy me a coffee. You can buy us a coffee hard cider to support the show. Rate the show. Go on any platform. Go ahead and rate the show on any platform. Tad, what do you have in your coffee?
Yes, I'm having hot coffee. I swear that this is hot coffee and not an alcoholic beverage.
Good call.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm having a Hudson North blueberry, so blueberry lemonade. It's good. It's very good. What does that look forward to? News, once again, volunteer. Don't have any much news around here. I know, Tad, you did talk about, you sent me a message about the Stanford search, so we can go into that after that. The 3-year-old that got lost in Stanford.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, hold on. So, volunteer, once again, New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, 3500 Club, Catskill Trail Crew, Catskill Mountain Club, Visitor Center, Jolly Rover Trail Crew. Volunteer whatever you can. It helps out our trails a lot. And then, if we just do that news real quick.
Yeah, I don't have the detail in front of me. You have it?
I remember, I remember a story because it's right next door. It's the store right next door to me. A 3-year-old ran off and apparently got lost for like 2 or 3 hours. And they had rangers, state troopers, firefighters, EMS looking for this kid. And apparently it said he was like 3 miles away from his last known point. So
yeah, that's pretty good in about an hour for
a kid. For a 3-year-old kid, especially like usually they just go around in circles.
Yeah.
And this kid just went straight and was gone 3 miles. And
sounds like a future 3,500 club member to me.
Complete bushwhacker. That kid's going to take it off right up the thing. He doesn't care about trails. He's just like, I'll go. But that was probably they had a swift water rescue or training down in the Esopus too, the DEC. So it's pretty cool. They're taking a lot of pictures now of their trainings and stuff like that. They're doing a really good job, the DEC Rangers. So give them a shout out whenever they can. Weather forecast. Do I even want to go to this? It's too far away to do that.
Quick story.
Yeah.
You got to come up here and get it on the tape. No charge. It's free.
20 years ago, Dee Dee and I went up and cleared out the land by Layman's Monument. It hadn't been touched in years. And thankfully, they took the hint and it's been clean and noticeable ever since. And now when you drive by, you see it. It's a good thing.
Nice.
So what is it's Layman's Monument? Layman. And what's once you tell us here? Tell us the story behind that because I remember walking on that.
Forest fire on that mountain. That's you see it where you go down on that sharp corner and look across, and you can see it up there. You can see the white monument, and that's what it was for. The guy died there fighting a forest fire. 1900 even. Yeah, around 1900. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a pretty substantial monument too.
Yeah,
so. Definitely. Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Actually, Twilight Park sponsored the Layman's Monument.
Oh yeah, I forgot to give credit to Twilight Park. Yeah, Twilight Park did it, right?
Rock on.
If we're talking about Layman's Monument, I have a story about it.
Oh, excellent.
At least I have it.
Grab the mic. It's open mic time.
I guess, it's open mic today.
Taking a little detour here.
Like you said,
extra
we're going
bonus content, all for the low price of
once again, bring the mic up to your face and talk, and like right up to it.
Right up to my face. Okay,
that's perfect. That's what it wants to look like.
Yeah, Layman's Monument. Of course, he died in the forest fire in 1900. From the Laurel House to Sunset Rock, there was a trail. And there was a side trail that went down to something called Council Bluff. Well, I was looking for Council Bluff for years. I was going along the trail, trying to cut down here, trying to cut down there. There was no place where you could cut down and go to anything that could be called Council Bluff. That was in the 1800s that trail existed. Now the trail goes down and goes right past Layman's Monument. It never went to the main trail between the Laurel House and Sunset Rock, never went anywhere near Layman's Monument. But once, or near Council Bluff for that matter, once the monument was built, I believe, and I don't have any proof of this, maybe somebody listening to this does, they moved the trail. The state said, we're going to put a trail down there that goes to Layman's Monument, and then on the way up, we're going to pass Council Bluff. So there is no trail that goes off, according to the old maps, that goes down to it. So the whole trail system, that whole section of trail was moved because of that monument in order to take that monument in and still be able to see Council Bluff. Council Bluff, by the way, is at the ledge, and it gives you a nice view up and down the Clove. It's one of the first views if you're going from the Laurel House. It's the first real view of Cartersville Clove that you're going to get to.
Okay.
And I think that's how it happened.
Interesting. So the monument was put there without like any access. It was just put there because that's what the guy passed away.
It was put there because that's where it happened. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You think they would have a trail going to there for people to respect the guy who passed, but then they're like,
well,
no.
I think that's why they did it. I think that's why they moved the trail to Layman's Monument, because it was just a straight shot between the Laurel House grounds and the first really nice view into the valley.
Oh, so instead of going down and then up to Council Rock, it just went straight over.
It's work to go down and back up.
Yeah,
I mean it's a long haul, but that makes it worthwhile. It's worth doing now that Layman's Monument is there, and at the same time, it opened up a trail that most people never got to see the other outlook there at Council Bluff.
Nice, cool, yeah. Well, thank you. Awesome.
I've got another sad story. I was there for the burning of...
You got to come up. You got to share it with everyone, even those who aren't in the room.
Put it right up to your face like that.
It's another sad story. I've been there for the burning of the Laurel House, the burning of the Mountain House, and Haynes Falls Fire Company attended. And it was like 5 a.m. We did it to try to keep the traffic down, and so not many people attended. But it was, you could see it all across the valley, and it was calls in that said the Mountain House was on fire. Well, on purpose. It wasn't an accident. It was falling down by then and starting to look, need a repair.
Wow. That's crazy times. That would have been something to say that you've been a part of. It's crazy in Catskill Mountain history. So that could be like a wrap into the history, the old Catskill Mountain history thing that I used to do. Like I got to rearrange this all now, right? Mm-hmm. Just undo that. So cool. Yeah. Oh, wow. So everybody wants that. Our shows are already 2 hours long with him yapping away. So
whose bright idea was to open this up to voter participation?
Yeah, right. There you go. Get that thing up to your phone.
All right.
There, you got to get that thing up there. So
jeez. Criticism.
All right, so let's get on the last set of sponsors, and then we'll get on to their guest. So discover Camp Catskill in Tannersville, your ultimate hiking store. Find top quality gear, apparel, and accessories for all your outdoor adventures. Our expert staff is here and help every hiker from beginners to seasoned pros. We also carry a variety of unique Catskill souvenir and gifts. Visit us online at campcatskill.co or in the store for your next journey. I have stickers there now, again, and I went there today. They got some awesome stuff for sale, so check them out. Also, embark on a transformative journey with Another Summit. Another Summit is dedicated to serving veterans and first responders with free outdoor activities. Activities like walks in nature, paddling, hiking, and even backpacking. Join our supportive community to rejuvenate in nature's embrace. Experience camaraderie, adventure, and healing at no cost. Take your next step with Another Summit and ascend to new heights of resilience and joy. Apply today at anothersummit.org. All right, so let's get on to the guest of the night. our first two guests, which means I'm going to have to get another. Can you get another seat?
Oh, yeah. I can do that.
We have Cindy and Dee Dee coming up. Cindy LaPierre, as I say that right? Cindy LaPierre and Dee Dee Turnsthorpe. You guys want to come up and we'll chat back and forth with you guys? I don't have a fourth microphone. Once again, this podcast is not top line Joe Rogan stuff like that. So,
yeah.
Once again, bring the mic straight up to your mouth, straight up to there. So, Cindy, you want to just chat first? So, just
hi,
state who you are and kind of how you're involved with the Mountaintop Historical Society.
This is Chat Cindy, not Chat GBT. But anyway,
She's good.
Dee Dee's the one who has been on this mountain longer than I have. But
Is that
then
an
again,
old person joke? Is that an age joke?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to confirm.
A poor one.
I know, a poor one. So I came up to these mountains 55 years ago. I can tell that because I just celebrated the wedding anniversary with the Mr. LaPierre over there, who captured me here, and I've been here ever since. So, but I grew up in the Berkshire Hills. Not exactly the same thing. So the Historical Society got started. I put those placards around the benches there because that's a quick history of the Mountaintop Historical Society starting in 1970 and up to 2 years ago that we had our 50th anniversary. So take time when you're finished listening here and go and look and read. You'll see what we've been doing. It started with a group of people who had gone to used to be the dump. Okay, it's now the
Landfill.
It's not the
Green County.
it's now the transfer station. Okay, and you have to separate everything. But they had been, the people living up here had been going to the dump and seeing all kinds of things related to the resorts up here, related to hiking up here, related to the huge resorts up here, and they saw it all being trashed, and they said, we've got to do something to preserve this history. Okay, so small group of people got together and started collecting all the postcards and stuff that Mr. Gildersleeve has been reading 3 or 4 I don't think twice is anywhere near right. And then somebody will call and he's got to look at that stuff again. So they formed a group. They put an ad in the Windham Journal, which was the weekly newspaper at the time, and said, anybody interested in local history, meet. I think they met at the school the first time. Is that right? Hunter School. Well, and then so they got a group of people together who decided that it was worth saving all this stuff. And so they formed a group called the Mountaintop Historical Society of Greene County, and they applied to the state for recognition as an educational program. Thank you. And since then, starting then, they first started looking for a place to put all the stuff that they were collecting. And Justine Hummel, who was sort of one of the leaders and bright lights of that group, had been collecting all this stuff in her house. And so if you look back at the minutes of the meetings of the Mountaintop Historical Society, you'll see Justine Hummel saying, and where are we going to put all this stuff? I have to get it out of my house. Where are we going to put all this stuff? I have to get it out of my house. And this actually went on for a good number of years. And in
92? The property here? I believe it was 92.
92. So 22 to 72 to 92. Okay. They kept doing that, and they kept examining some places to see what would work. And then there was a board meeting on a spring day. It was spring because it was pouring rain. The meeting was at a lawyer's office in Tannersville. At the end of the meeting, he said, the price on the railroad station has gone down again. We should go look at it. So those of us who were there, and Gildersleeve was there. Mm-hmm. Who else was there? Dee Dee? No, not Dee Dee. Justine was there. We came up here to the railroad station. The railroad station was this beautiful railroad station that we're in right now. Didn't look like this at all. Okay, there was water pouring through the ceiling and down into the cellar. There was.
It had been a private home.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is why we work together well. She
Yeah,
tells me all the
pull that
things I'm
microphone
supposed
right
to
up to your
remember.
mouth, Dee.
Oh.
No.
Oh, Dee Dee.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's.
I'm doing okay.
Yeah,
We
you're
got
doing
her in
okay.
there.
Yeah, when she can come in, yeah, she can. Yeah, right. There you go.
Okay, so we came up to the station. The room that was the train office had water. They had made that into a kitchen. There was water pouring in, absolutely pouring in, and so we went back and started getting excited, and fortunately we had people that also believed that this station was worth saving and repairing and putting into use for the Mountaintop Historical Society. So that was the beginning of the fixing up and all the other stuff. So first,
How much did they sell it for? Do you remember?
I don't remember what we paid for it. I do remember that the roof, the first big thing that had to be done, the roof, was a $20,000 investment. Okay, so.
And that was then.
In
yeah.
92.
In 92. And so.
The new Honda Accord for like $10,000.
Okay, so this had been, Dee Dee started to say, you want to talk about the house?
Well, the house was sheetrocked, divided into rooms. It had a drop ceiling. Much of the sheetrock that's in here now, from what I understand, was saved, but there was some additional added on. Correct, Bob?
The walls were covered with sheetrock.
Mm-hmm, right.
Beautiful wood walls were covered with sheetrock, or what looked like linoleum in the photographs. I mean, it was a mess. It's something out of the mid. Am I speaking loud enough to get?
Probably. I'll be able to enhance it.
In any case, it was a mess. The windows had to be moved. You have to come here and see it and actually take a look at it, and people can point out to you the changes that were made, but it was an absolute mess. It didn't look like anything could be done with it, but thanks to a number of people,
Paul,
including Paul,
Larry Tompkins, yeah.
and others, it was a tremendous job. I didn't have anything to do with it. I was teaching at the time.
And it was not an overnight job.
No.
It took years.
And I do believe that on one of those placards over there is a single photo of what it looked like before we got started. Okay? So.
Right.
Yes.
He had been the postmaster in Haynes Falls. Yeah.
Okay. So.
We're still rolling. Go.
We're rolling? Okay. I'm sorry. So we had volunteers and we had people that were hired to take this place apart and put it back together. Somebody said they had dropped the ceiling. They had dropped that ceiling, which the really positive part for that is that having put a dropped ceiling in there, when the drop ceiling was taken out, that was the original ceiling in beautiful southern yellow pine. So we started there. The benches that are around in this passenger room were rebuilt. When the ceiling was dropped, that's when the windows were also dropped, and then they had to be they were raised. We had to drop them back 2 feet. Oh, we had to raise them 2 feet. Okay. So these are original windows, okay, which again just needed to be moved back into the space that they had originally been in. So, take some time when we finish here and look around at this, okay? We had a couple of very capable contractors, carpenters, and furniture makers, okay, who put this back together. But it's the whole building, all right, was put back together. Okay, after the roof, the exterior needed to be fixed and painted, and actually it just got, it's been 20 years, so it just got a repaint and a redo.
That building that was up front, was moved from the back of the property. Oh, wow. So that was quite an accomplishment.
Right.
That's called the visitor center.
Okay, so yeah, lots and lots.
And was that known as the Lockhurst Hotel?
This was all the Lockhurst property.
And where that building is, it's not the Lockhurst building, but it was from somebody mentioned the Hunter
Mountain Resort Ranch.
Hunter Mountain Resort Ranch.
I have some notes here, folks.
Okay.
Like a loaded gun.
You can
Your memories on paper.
The Hunter Mountain Resort Ranch was back here. There's a barn back in the woods there that was part of the Hunter Mountain Resort Ranch. That was a later acquisition. Mm. Okay, we started with the railroad station, and then there was a grant through that went through the Hunter Foundation, not the Hunter Foundation. Yes, the Hunter Foundation, and the state, and they were willing to. Thank you. One of those words.
It's a group effort.
They were willing to fund moving an old building and making that building.
And so so I'm going to describe this facility as more or less a campus. You have several buildings. Right. The railroad station that we're in today, that you described as starting off as being in shambles and probably inhabited by
various animals.
Yes. But this is its original location.
This is the original location.
On the railroad.
Yes.
Right. And the railroad lines would bring guests to and from the hotels, the resorts, the camps, etc. And so we're sitting here today in the area that people would wait in for their train to go home after their stay here. And you've done a marvelous job restoring it. You, your crew, the whole, society is just you come in, and when I came in today, I kind of had that sense that it was 1900 something.
Yeah.
And I was waiting to hear the whistle blow from the train and then, take my ride back to the city or somewhere. So kudos to you guys. And I did check out some of the photos.
Well, this is actually the second station.
Yeah,
the first station was down below on 23A, just below the post office, a few buildings. Mm-hmm. That was the first building. And then in 1913, there was so much traffic on the roads. You had automobiles by then. You had stagecoaches. You had pedestrians, people riding horses. So there was no room on the main street. So they had to decide, and there was quite a controversy over where they were going to put this building. And of course, the Loxhurst, Mr. Martin was a pretty powerful man, so he managed to get, which was an asset to his business as well. So the track was
So the station, so the station ended up in his backyard.
right.
Yes.
right.
To make it really convenient for his guests.
Absolutely.
So, did he also own the Hunter Mountain Resort Ranch?
No.
No, that was different owners. Okay, so I'm gonna call these like the quick pitch questions. You ready? Okay. Get the mics up. Get them really close. You're ready to go. Take a deep
You
breath.
ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Exhale. So I did a little research. Apparently, I didn't know this, but for a historical society to exist and be tax exempt in New York, you need to be chartered by the New York State Department of Education. So that's something you guys did in the 70s.
Yes.
Long before you had this facility.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to redo that or requalify from time to time?
That's a good question.
There is a simple statement.
Okay.
Okay, that's a yearly thing that they send. We just fill in, about how many people have come through, etc. And the biggest part was in the beginning, getting all the paperwork together for that, and we had the same lawyer that brought us up here to look at this helped with that.
Was involved at that time and for a number of years. So speaking about people and involvement, how many members do you have at the present time? Is there like a membership roster? Just shout out the answer.
No, I'm looking for Jessica.
Jessica
Where's
would know.
Jessica left. George told me how many there was. I forgot.
Like 50 members?
I thought he said 70.
Couple hundred.
Oh, is there? Okay. I thought he said like 70.
And so what has been the ebb and flow of membership over the years?
How many members, Jessica?
How many members now?
Approximately 300, give or take.
Nice.
300 members. And from the looks of it, we have all of them here today.
Yes.
Little joke, but all right. And has that been the norm, the 300 members for a while? Has it increased recently? Has there been an ebb and flow with that? What do you say?
I think it's pretty much maintained. Justine Hummel was the Historical Society for many, many years. She's gone now, but and she really ran this thing for 30 years or whatever. So she managed to bring in a lot of people. A lot of members were brought in because Justine and her husband worked at Twilight Park. Twilight was always very interested in the history of the area, so it just gravitated from there.
Yeah. As an aside, I'd love to do a show on the Twilight Park when we get to it. So
the mystery of the Twilight.
People who can help.
You live there? The mist. You've been down to the Haynes Falls.
Pardon me?
You've been to the Haynes Falls? Is this?
The entrance is right over Haynes Falls.
Yeah, that's prohibited property. We can't ever go
That's why
there.
we need to do an episode on it.
I know, right? And go down to Seven Sisters and Seven Falls. Yeah.
Know of prohibited properties.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
We're against that. So my next quick pitch questions are: what is like your annual budget, fundraising? What is the finances that goes into running this
Jessica just walked away
operation?
again.
Jessica. Yeah.
Jessica has the answers to this.
Fundraisers, they have a few fundraisers. The one
So why
is
don't you
that
tell us about the fundraisers and
Have you-
how we can help support you with that?
Oh.
History on a plate.
Yes.
We actually, the one thing that's going to be coming up for the third time that Jessica had actually started was a dinner called History on Your Plate, where we had a local chef did a dinner based on a menu from the Catskill Mountain House. Okay,
Is that the place that had chicken or didn't have chicken?
Oh,
they
nice.
didn't serve it.
It's the place he wasn't serving chicken that night.
All right. So when you're going to come to the History on a Plate, don't expect chicken. Okay. Continue.
So then the second year was last year we did it, and that one was a group of this was a group of different chefs in the area put together a dinner that we did in the barn, which is over there through the woods, and Jessica's just tell us the beginnings of the year. Take this.
Yeah, so we're interested in, what's your annual budget and how do you guys raise the money?
For this event
Pull
specifically.
that right up to your face, your mouth.
Operation.
Pull that right up to your mouth.
That's
There you go.
primarily through memberships and donations. The events specifically come from grants that we get from Greene County. The History on Your Plate, that comes from ticket sales. Everything we spend comes from ticket sales, and we've done pretty well so far. Yeah.
So are there still tickets available?
Well, so we actually have not even begun promoting for this
okay.
year. It'll be next week. We'll send out
The
invites.
Nice.
This year we're planning on doing a historical wine tasting. It's with J. Stephen Cascalis. I believe I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He calls himself a historical horticultural educator. He's also an author, and he's an attorney. He's worked for the Senate, and it's going to be really interesting. And just a quick note, last year we actually only had one chef who did the food. It was Terrence Mall from Pantry on Main, which is local in town, and he'll be doing it again this year. And so we'll be doing some sort of menu based on horticulture in general, so the local farms and pairings with the wine selection from grapes that have been cultivated in the Hudson Valley for well over 100 years, possibly almost 200, and it's going to be very exciting.
So now that you've whetted our appetite, what are these tickets going to cost us?
For you?
Yes, for me. I want the special price, and then I want the Danny price. Although Danny won't be able to find the barn because he barely found the train station today. Just saying. So what do you expect the cost?
So we have not decided on a cost yet. The last few years we started at 50, it went up to 60. I'm hoping that it's not going to go up too much this year, so it'll be somewhere around that price range.
So even hikers can afford to come.
That's the point. We try to make it as accessible as possible
for locals,
to mostly everyone in the community. It's a really fun event. It's a great community gathering. As Joanne would say, it's a friend raiser. I love that term. She taught me that term. It's one of my favorite words that I've learned here. So it really is a great way for you to engage with the community and eat some good food and learn something about, specifically I tried to focus this event on the history of tourism and hospitality in the Catskills. So it tends to be around something like that.
Well, thank you for hooking us up and hooking up the Mountaintop Historical Society. It's great. So next, this is So Dee Dee, I have a question for you. How were you drawn to the Mountaintop Historical Society? What brought you into helping out here?
My mom was always interested. We owned a hotel in Elka Park, and my mom was always interested in local history, which as a teenager, of course, I paid no attention to. But then I've had the best jobs on the mountaintop. I've worked at Hunter Mountain Fire Tower. I ran Devil's Tombstone Campsite for about 8 years. I was a nurse at Hunter Mountain. So each job seemed to incorporate a little bit more of our local history. The fire tower, I was able to take that time up there to study the history of the fire tower and why it was built. And it was a massive amount of fires back here at that time. But it's just been mostly just living my life up here. And we have such a history. I mean, we just have a phenomenal history. Most of these small towns up here do, but ours is unique. I mean, it really is. It started with tanning, and that was the big surge for 40 years, 35 years. The railroad came in 82, pre-parks, any of the parks. So I know that helped make the parks into reality. But pretty much just from living up here.
And I do have to say that Dee Dee is now the official Town of Hunter historian. Okay, so
congratulations.
Yeah, for 13
so she's working
years.
at it.
Nice. I mean, that like you said, once you you're a kid, you don't really notice that stuff, but once you start digging in, the history here just grabs you and just takes you. Finding out just everything connecting.
I worry about our history because newspapers are a big source of our history, and until we work out something with digitization or whatever. I don't know. I don't know where we're going to store all that. So.
Your years up there.
Fire tower was a great job.
Do you have to hike every day to get up there, or what did you say
I used
tonight?
to bring a 4-wheel drive.
Lucky you.
I stayed up there on weekends.
Okay, nice.
With the raccoons and they got into my Jeep many, many times, and they used to chew the wires. And so I was young. Oh my God! And I guess back then I really learned about litter, because hikers would hike up the mountain with 12 packs on their back and leave the empties. And that used to drive me crazy. And I was 23 then, 24, and I learned all about littering.
So when was that? I'm sorry to bring your age, but it's 60s, 70s? What would you say?
70s.
So I've heard a lot of stories about the partiers down in the 70s that they would bring kegs up to the top of mountains and stuff and throw them down. And there's kegs off of North Dome and stuff like that you can find from back of parties. Because Jim Boughton told me, that Spruceton area used to be a hippie central area. Everybody would just go up to the mountains and party and be naked.
Yeah, it was
and stuff.
different
So
world
weird.
then. Different world.
Yeah.
But some kids broke into my Jeep because I used to keep it parked at the Slutsky's so that I didn't have to license it and register it. So they ruined the Jeep. They totally destroyed it. So I was going to be out of job. And Orville Slutsky, who owned Hunter Mountain Ski Ball, heard about it and came through and gave me his Jeep for the summer. And every Friday I would drive up to the Hunter Mountain and fill it up with gas. And he was quite a guy. So
it's tough to not talk like this, Tad, because usually I'll be like, hey, do this next question. So it's tough talk. But you want to ask her about the unappreciated places here? Ask both of them, actually?
Yeah, go knock yourself out. Yeah, my permission.
Okay. So
I'm going to take a little time out.
With the mountaintop area, what do you think of the places people overlook? Most people just go to hiking, but what are there other places that we can go that we can just be have a different sense of other
Lanesville.
than Lanesville?
Lanesville, as far as I'm concerned, has brought the railroads to the mountaintop, which made the mountaintop into what it is today. And Lanesville is an overlooked area as far as I'm concerned.
It's going from Phoenicia up to here, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, they dug through those woods. I mean, when you think about how hard it must have been in the 1880s to build that trail through the woods, it's just incredible. Of course, I worked at Devil's Tube Store for 8 years, so I got to explore the railroad tracks in the back of the campsites. So that was another part of my love for the history.
Oh, the Fenwick Lumber Company you're talking about, up there?
Fenwick Lumber Company. There's actually a book now. Elaine Warfield wrote a great book about it.
Yeah, she was on the show. It's fantastic. Fantastic time in Catskill on history.
One of the things that, in general, the hiking community might not be aware of is back then, in the 1800s and going forward for a period of time, it just wasn't tourism up here, but there were factories up here making furniture, chair factories.
We made lots of furniture up here. And Lanesville was the first area that had the furniture factories. Hunter was also very big on, they needed the water. So anywhere there was a water source. Yeah.
So it was the logging, the furniture, the those other things. No,
leather.
The trains.
No, what Dee Dee had mentioned earlier, the tanning, that was one of the first biggest industries up here. And then the parks have been mentioned a few times in the 1880s. Twilight Park, Elka Park,
Aniora, Sunset, Santa Cruz.
So all of those were private parks brought people to the area, and again,
it's crazy.
Yep.
Where do you want to go next, Ted?
So, 1.5 miles, by the way. Somebody said, you said, just at the top of Catskill Falls, but it's 1.5 miles.
Yeah. And we're there. We're near there.
We're near there. Okay.
But when you were, I'm sorry. When you were talking about hiking, the first thing you learn when you start hiking is it's much easier to walk uphill than it is to walk downhill. It kills your knees.
As you get older, yes.
Myself.
Yeah, right.
When you get old enough.
But there were other things. One of the things that the Historical Society has done, and that is sponsored a pretty robust hiking program every summer. And Mr. Gildersleeve has been a good part of that. And so that gets you into places like Rip Van Winkle, Rip's Retreat. Okay, if you go to North South Lake and go to the parking lot there, you can find the remnants of this 1950s children's place. It was back in the day when tourism and the automobiles, you'd have people taking their families to North Pole. What else? Up around Lake George, and there was a group of business people who put together a Rip's Retreat, which had a live Rip Van Winkle.
Hargrove from Palinville. Yeah.
From Palinville. Yeah. And his dog, Wolf, with him, who would be over in that area. They had Dutch, you could buy the wooden shoes, Dutch wooden shoes. They had, you could bowl the 9 pins, just like Rip bowled. So they had a glass blower. It was like a little Dutch village.
Yes.
Where was this located again?
Right in what's now the parking lot at South Lake.
Yeah.
Wow, I never knew this. Interesting.
And there was a little train.
Like a kid's train. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little small kids train.
Yeah, kids
but
train.
it just didn't make it. It couldn't make it.
But it went down using part of the old mountain road up to the Catskill Mountain House itself. But it made a little loop around, and that was very exciting.
You would go up to Fairyland. And I always tried to figure out why we were going up to Fairyland when it was down the hill. Yeah. So, but that's what they called it. So, what else? What other amazing hiking things have you done?
Besides Rip's Retreat, well, certainly well, we can talk about that too. But the trails on South Mountain were the main trails that people used. I think it's shifting, and I think most of the people think about going up North Mountain now, which has great views, but there were no hotels up there. And there were no people, I mean, so that you had the hotels were concentrated on South Mountain and at Pine Orchard, the area where the mountain house was. And that led people up South Mountain. I just tried to put some pictures together for a hike that I led. And there were tons and tons of pictures of South Mountain. It was much harder to get pictures of North Mountain.
But I'd like to bring up one thing Bob mentioned. We have to start with the Catskill Mountain House. Catskill Mountain House was built in 1823. How they did it, I have no idea. I mean, they had nothing. They had no electricity, no running water, no automobiles, nothing. So, and that was built on a ledge. So that was 1823. Then the Laurel House opened in like the 1840s, 1850s. You can't quote me, but and then the Catskill. There's where the chicken comes in. George Harding wanted fried chicken for his daughter, and so he built that, had it built in 1882. Again, back to the men that built it. They built it over the winter, so there was a lot of waste going on. It was just incredible. So it was the 3 big hotels in Haines Falls that were really the key draw for the mountaintop.
Yeah, and then all the roads came here because this was an attraction, and then all the railroads started coming here because this was attraction, and
because the man who built Hotel Catskill was friends with one train magnate down in Kingston, and Thomas Cornell.
Yep.
And Beach was in cahoots with the other train magnate. He built his own railroad. I forgot.
Is that the Otis Railway? The Otis Railway? Is that the one he built?
He built the Catskill Mountain Railroad from Catskill Point down in Catskill itself.
Wow. These people with all their money. Good Lord.
We just have it just goes on and on and on, our history.
That's just the history around here is absolutely insane.
But I wanted to bring...
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up one thing about the furniture factories. The furniture factories took place because when they tanned, they didn't take all the wood. They just left it lying in the woods. So it was really just scrap. So they made use of it. So that was another quite an active employment for the area.
Amazing. So wrapping this up, how can we help out the Mountaintop Historical Society? Like volunteer, donate, stuff like that? Go ahead.
We need volunteers. We always need volunteers. We work, part of earning money is having this building open for people to come in and make donations and buy books and so on. On the weekends, we charge for parking in our parking lot.
We ask for donations.
Excuse me. We ask for donations. We are not for profit. Okay. But any of the programs that we run, including what Jessica's talking about with their history on a plate dinners that she's done, we always need volunteers to help put that stuff together. So yes, volunteers for part of the trail. The beginning of this trail out to Catskill Falls belongs to the Historical Society until it gets to the state property, and so we are responsible for the maintenance of that part of the trail.
Nice. So Tad and I will come on the history on a plate and hand out hard ciders and stuff.
Okay.
That'll be our deal and stuff.
Sounds good.
Sounds easy.
Thank you.
We can be the MCs.
Yeah. Be the DJs here. Did they have DJs back then?
We got maybe Rachel Jean can join us. We got some music that I'm sure the crowd would like.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us on the show.
We need to get some of these other people up here, right?
Yeah, we're gonna. Yeah.
So we'll move on to
Dr. Titus.
Dr. T. All right.
Thank you very much for being on the show. Don't trip up. Yeah, watch out.
History on a plate.
Yeah, watch out for all these wires all over here. Dr. Titus.
If you trip, we're not responsible. Okay? We're not insured.
This guy takes it.
Chug that down. Dr. Titus is going to come up here, a Catskill geologist, talk about some Catskill geology and how they basically shaped the mountains or the railroads guided up the mountains with the geology of the Catskills. You may be louder? You want to be louder?
What?
I can turn this thing up.
You go right ahead.
So why don't you give a little intro about yourself, sir?
I'm a professional geologist. My field is invertebrate paleontology. My best work in that field is patterns of evolution in the fossil record, so that I think I can call myself a genuine, authentic scientist in every respect. But in recent decades, especially with my wife Johanna, she, who is a biologist, have entered the field of popular science writing. And currently you can read us in the Mountain Eagle, which I think I can fairly describe as the newspaper of the Catskills. We are weekly columnists, running a column called The Catskill Geologist. I'm not sure, but we may be the only geology columnist on the planet Earth.
Glad to have you here. The only Catskill geologist on planet Earth. Amazing. So, can you describe like the roles that Glacier plays in carving the areas for the railroads to be guided up? Did they play a certain role that the glaciers did?
I'd like to go back a little bit before that. I'd like to take everybody here to the Mountain House site, and I'd like to bring you back about 12, 13, 14,000 years. And we're standing right there where the hotel will someday be. And all around us, we're not at a peak of the glaciation. We're late in the Ice Age, and everywhere we look, it's tundra. There's not a tree to be seen. Up the valley, down the valley, east, west of the valley. And we gaze to the north to about where the city of Hudson is, and there's something down there in the bottom of the valley. And we're given a lot of time. We're the mind's eye. We can spend as much time there as we want. And we gaze, and weeks and months and a few years go by, and that thing is moving. We can't tell what it is. We don't know what it is, but it's getting closer. It's moving down the Hudson Valley. More years pass and more years pass and decades pass, and that thing is getting closer and closer. There is one beautiful noon when the sun is really shining down into the valley, and we look and we see and we recognize what it is. It's a glacier. It's going to be in the future called the Hudson Valley Glacier. And indeed, it is moving down the valley. It passes beneath us and below what will be the Mountain House site. And it continues on to the south. It's heading for Kingston. It's not going to stop until it gets to the New York City vicinity. But now it's not just moving south, it's starting to swell in the valley floor. It's starting to rise higher and higher and higher and up the slopes below us. And those slopes are not as steep as they are today. The slope in front of the Mountain House site is almost a cliff. It drops down 1,500 feet in the space of half a mile. Not back then. The slope is much more gentle, and the glacier is rising up that slope, getting closer and closer and closer to us until we're vaguely uncertain about our future. We're instinctively backing away a little bit from the edge of the slope. There's a moment in time when it reaches to the level of the Mountain House Hotel, and it stretches out across the Hudson Valley. On the far side, we can see the Taconic Mountains. In the winter, the snows fall and everything is white. In the summer, there's some melting, and it gets a little bit darker. In the summer, you can see the Taconic Mountains so very clearly. We stand there, and suddenly we hear a great, horrible crack, a loud, blasting, cracking sound, and then another, and then another, and then still another. The ice is moving, and the ice is sticking to the bedrock, and from time to time it's yanking great masses of rock out of the front of the Catskill Mountains and dragging them off. That are the sounds that we're hearing. Well, we can't tell, and we can't look, and we can't see down through the ice, but we have been witnessing the Hudson Valley Glacier creating the Wall of Manitou, the Catskill front. When that ice does melt away, it will look so much the way it does now, and so much the way it did in 1820s, when people came there and decided to build a hotel on the edge of the Wall of Manitou. Had there not been a cliff there, had it not been so steep, they would not have built the Catskill Mountain House Hotel. Had they not built the hotel, well, can you rewrite Catskill's history and get what we have today? I don't think you do.
So with this glacier flowing from, of course, like north to south, how did it come down through here and create the Catskill Clove, the Stony Clove, stuff like that? Did it break off of the Hudson?
Okay, yeah, let's do that. There must have been some sort of a Catskill Clove before then. I don't think it was as wide, I don't think it was as deep, and I don't think it was as steep, but it was there. And the glacier is coming down the valley, and it gets to that proto-Catskill Clove, and some of the ice peels off and moves up the canyon. And some of that ice gets to where Catskill Falls is going to be, and some of that ice moves northeast across where Catskill Falls is today. Meanwhile, the ice is still rising right there where the Mountain House was, and ice is crossing the crest of the mountain range, and some of that ice is flowing to the west. That ice is scouring into the bedrock and creating a basin. It's a basin that we call North Lake. But the other ice that passed across the top of Catskill, what would be Catskill Falls, has continued to the northeast and scoured out a basin that we're going to someday call South Lake. There's a problem developing here, isn't there? There are two glaciers moving towards each other. They're going to collide. Have you ever heard of an ice age collision? Have you ever heard of glaciers colliding with each other? Perhaps not quite that loud, and perhaps not quite that quick, but there was a collision. And you know what? Each of those masses of ice had been bulldozing Earth, and that Earth is bulldozed into the oncoming Earth from the other glacier, and it creates that peninsula that lies between North and South Lake. Have you been out there? Have you walked out onto the peninsula and gone to see where they have that Thomas Cole painting? Look to the east towards the park and see a glacier coming towards you. Then look to the south towards Catskill Falls and see a glacier coming towards you. Stand there and experience the collision of those two glaciers, and you'll understand how North Lake got there, South Lake got there, that peninsula got there, and you've already learned how the Wall of Manitou got there. Isn't this great stuff? You didn't like taking science when you were in high school, did you?
So with this, like the glaciers basically were the railroads, the railroad lines and the trains carving out these clothes and stuff for the railroad to travel for.
Let's bring the railroads into that. One railroad passed through Stony Cove. Another railroad passed through Grand Gorge. Were those gorges always and always and always there? Gee, when you drive through a thing like that, maybe you pull over, you get out and you look up, you just have a feeling that thing has just always been there. Grand Gorge had always been there. Stony Cove has always been there. But I'd like to take you back to a time when the entire Schoharie Creek Basin was filled with ice. I mean, right to the top. Think about that. Go to Prattsville sometime and look up about 1,500 feet. Stand there and turn and wave your arms through the ground, through the air. Point up those 1,500 feet and say to yourself, this was all ice. That rearranges your sense of reality, doesn't it? But this is our region during the Ice Age. Only 12,000, 15,000 years ago. It's just a blink of the eye to a geologist. And all of that ice melted. Where did it go? Well, it went from being ice to being flowing water. And it found whatever gap there was on the south side of the Schoharie Creek Valley. And it poured through. And I mean it poured through. And it was erosive. It poured through where Grand Gorge is and began eroding the Grand Gorge Canyon, and it poured through where Stony Cove is, and it began eroding the canyon that is now Stony Cove. And it cut down quickly through that bedrock at Stony Cove, and it cut down quickly through that bedrock at Grand Gorge. And 12,000, 13,000 years ago, the railroad people came along and say, this is where we can run the railroads. And they can come north and they can go south. Without the Ice Age, you don't get those routes. You don't bring trains to the Hotel Catskill. You don't bring trains to Oneonta. You don't develop the economy of the Catskills. No Ice Age, it just isn't the same.
Right. Yeah. So if you folks thought that was impressive, you need to read what you can get online that Dr. Titus writes. Do you still do weekly, or is it
Weekly.
Weekly. So there is a lot of material out there. And what I enjoy doing, because I've hiked so many of these places in the Catskills many, many, many times, I like to, when I'm getting ready for a hike, I like to Google and find something that Dr. Titus wrote about it. And then I read it, and I read it again. And then imagine this, that you're walking through that place. And so today we heard talk of South Mountain. And I remember a couple summers ago, I was in South Mountain having read Dr. Titus's description.
You could call me Bob.
Bob, my buddy Bob here, we go back a few glaciations. My buddy Bob, his voice is in my head describing how those large, round cobbles got into the rock. And it's so vivid to me, just like you heard him describe today. And it's really, I think, magical. So I have like 35,000 questions, but I knew that I had to distill it to one. And so this comes from something you wrote, and I want you to explain to the audience and our eventual listeners what it is you meant when you said the following. It is one of the ironies of the Catskill geology that the climb to the top of one mountain range takes you to the bottom of another. So with a smile, he's going to lean forward and answer that for us.
I'm going to stand.
Oh, he's going to stand up. He's standing up. This is
which won't work well on a podcast, but it works well here. I'm going to point to the east, and I'm going to ask you to see through the wall here and see the horizon. I'm going to put one hand up and then another hand up, and I'm going to ask you to see the profile of a towering mountain range. I mean a big one. It's at least 15,000 feet tall, perhaps 30,000 feet tall as the Andes Mountains, or perhaps as tall as the Himalayas. And they rise above western New England. I mean, think about that. The next time you're hiking on the Catskill front, hold your hands up and see that in your mind's eye. White snow at the peak, blue slopes in the middle, and red earth at the bottom of the Acadian mountain range, which today we call western New England. And I want you to stand there for 20 million years. You're the mind's eye. You can do this. And watch. Those mountains are weathering. The bedrock is turning into sediment. Those mountains are eroding. Mountain streams are carrying water down their slopes and sweeping away all of that sediment. Those mountains are eroding away. Mountains that may have been 30,000 feet tall are, in the Berkshires, no taller than 1,200 feet. Where did all that sediment go? It was swept to the west, out across all of eastern North America, by 350 million years ago. And during those succeeding 350 million years, those sediments have hardened into rock, and the streams that developed have cut valleys into those rocks and left mountains behind, among which are the mountains that we call the Catskills. When you stand at the top of Slide Mountain, you're standing, 3,000 feet up, 4,000 feet up on thousands of feet of sediment that had hardened into rock after being washed out of the towering mountains of western New England. Stand on the top of Slide Mountain, look to the east, and see the mountains that were once there in New England. This geology stuff is so much fun.
What did they call that again? What was Slide called when it was at the top? The peak is at the top of the glacier. I forgot. Don't they a special name for like a peak that's peaking out of the glacier?
A Nunatak.
Nunatak. Yeah. I saw that name and I was just like, I don't know how to pronounce that
Strange
stuff.
you would know that, Bob.
I know, right? So, I mean, that's phenomenal. So, well, how about for this for like geology and stuff like that, where can we like besides the Catskill or the Eagle Mountain News, where else can we get some of your stuff? You can buy. You have like how many books out now?
Well, again, I'd like to push the Mountain Eagle. We're very proud to work weekly for the Mountain Eagle. We work for free, and we see ourselves as not only supporting this newspaper, but because it's the newspaper of the Catskills, we're supporting the Catskills in that. We have written over the last 33 years 1,300 newspaper and magazine columns. And so when you're going somewhere, I promise you, email me and I'll send you an article.
All right.
We got there ahead of you. We have 5 books out, and one on the bedrock geology of the Catskills, one on the glacial geology of the Catskills, one on the glacial geology of the Hudson Valley, one an anthology of articles, and our newest book, the Hudson River Schools of Art and Their Ice Age Origins, is about art history, for crying out loud. And we believe that we have discovered that the Hudson River School of Art and all of the landscape architecture of the Hudson Valley can be directly linked to the Ice Age that swept through this region. You can't understand Catskills history, Catskills culture, Hudson Valley history, or Hudson Valley culture, these rich cultures, without understanding how the Ice Age created the landscape that inspired the art and the history.
Fantastic stuff. And we had you on 2 episodes.
Say again?
We've had you on 2 episodes here. Episode 12, you were one of...
I think so, yes.
And episode 120, you and your wife came on and chatted about your new book. So if you want to listen to those episodes, they're fantastic episodes of just stories.
Oh, that's right. You can go online and listen.
Absolutely.
Oh, we urge you to do that.
So anything else you want to say? Thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
I on behalf of the Catskills, want to thank you. I don't think you're getting rich doing this. But you're supporting our Catskills, aren't you?
Definitely.
Good.
Don't want to get rich. It's too much responsibility.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you very much, Dr. Titus. Now we got Paul LaPierre to come up to talk about the Empire State Railway Museum. We'll get a little bit deeper into the Catskill Railways there now. So welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate. Bring that microphone right up to your face.
Right there.
All right. So, a little background about yourself real quick, and then we'll get into some good questions about the railways.
Sure. I've been living here since 1963, well, 69 fully, and I came up into the Catskills, curiously enough, by way of geology. I was a geology major at Hofstra College on Long Island, and our field geology course in 1963 started in Central Park, came up through the Palisades, the Ramapough, and into the Catskills, where my prof had a summer home in Wyndham. So our objective was to study the strata, and based on the field information we got, to interpret that for the final grade in the course. So that got me into the Catskills. As a child after the Second World War, I had lived in the Rocky Mountains, so when I found the Catskills, I fell in love with mountains again. I got involved with the Empire State Railway Museum in 2009 when the gentleman who was the president of the organization at the time asked me if I could make some reproductions of benches that were in the Phoenicia Station. The Phoenicia Station is right off Route 28, and it's the junction from which the branch line that came up into the mountains here originated. And the reason he asked me that was he had been the industrial arts teacher in the Tannersville School, and I had at that point become a woodworker, furniture maker, cabinet maker, architectural woodworking. And he had asked me to make those benches, which got me involved with the museum itself. And I
was asked to be a member of the board. My interest in railroads went back to when I was a kid, like a lot of people, and had a set of Lionel trains under the tree one year. And I fell in love with trains. And having gotten involved with the museum has gotten me deeper into the restoration of railroad artifacts, particularly rail cars, the museum itself. I got involved in this one when it was being restored. And also into the history of particularly the Ulster and Delaware Railroad, which began, if you go back to 1869, that was the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. And once that happened, the building of railroads just went haywire off of the fact that they could go coast to coast now. Branch lines, short lines, major railroads all evolved in the post-Civil War era to a great degree. And one of those was the Ulster and Delaware. And that was built originally as the Rondout and Oswego. And the intent was to provide a link that bypassed Albany. If you look at it as a hypotenuse of a triangle, you have the Erie Canal coming into Albany from the west, and then going south from Albany, you have the Hudson River. So you had all that boat traffic. Well, the Rondout and Oswego was meant to intercept that before it got to Albany and bring it south of Albany and provide a shorter route for freight goods. The man behind that was Thomas Cornell, who also had his hand in tugboats, ferry boats, barges on the Hudson River. He was involved with the Delaware and Hudson Canal. He had his hand in a lot of things, including a number of railroads, but the one that particularly interested me, and we're going to discuss now, was the Ulster and Delaware. So the Rondout and Oswego evolved into the Ulster and Delaware within several years, and eventually in the early 1870s ran from Rondout as far as Stamford, west of here. And by the early 1870s, the Ulster and Delaware Railroad directors realized that the evolving, well-established but continuing to evolve resort community that existed up in the high peaks here, in the high peaks region, the mountaintop, was a lucrative source of business, both from passenger standpoint and also from freight. The local businesses would derive a lot of benefit from having a railroad connection down the mountain, ultimately to the main lines that ran up and down the Hudson Valley, then New York Central. So in 1881, January of 1881, the directors of the railroad resolved to build a line from Phoenicia up to Hunter and Tannersville. And by June of 1881, they had laid track as far as Edgewood, which, if you are familiar with the Stony Clove, is on the south side. As you go over the Stony Clove, you've got Devil's Tombstone camp area there. Now you're in Edgewood. By June, they had reached Edgewood. As the season went on, that was a particularly harsh winter in 1881. Most of the workers on the railroad, building the railroad, were Italian and not used to the cold weather. So things kind of went into a hiatus over the winter. But by June of 1882, the railroad reached Hunter. It came over the Stony Clove, down onto the north side of the mountain, very steep grade coming up and down, and at what became known as, established as Tannersville Junction, which is roughly where Ski Bowl Road comes out onto Route 214. Over in the woods to the east was where the railroad came down below Plateau Mountain, and it was going to branch, and the eastbound branch would go to Tannersville and ultimately Haynes Falls and North Lake, and what's now North Lake State Park. And to the west, it would branch and go and terminate in Hunter. That's about a 3-mile run. So by June of 1882, they had reached Hunter. And the first revenue train to run over the line took a load of Excelsior from an Excelsior factory just to the east of Dolan's Lake, where Dolan's Lake is now. And for anyone who doesn't know what Excelsior is, this goes back to the packaging used for fragile materials before peanuts and bubble wrap, plastic peanuts and bubble wrap. Excelsior was made from wood shavings. There was a factory there near Dolan's Lake that produced Excelsior, and it was used for packing of fragile objects. So the first revenue load that the railroad carried out of the mountains was a load of Excelsior from Hunter down to Phoenicia. By August, they had established passenger service into Hunter, and they had a station, not like this. This is the third generation of stations, this design, that the railroad had. The early one was a much simpler affair, and later it was a more Victorian design. And Hunter Station never acquired this style. But they had a station and a freight house. They could bring passengers in. They could haul freight in and out of the area. Lockwood Furniture Factory was a big business in Hunter. Lockwood himself also had another factory in Edgewood, which produced the lumber that he used to make the furniture in his factory in Hunter.
So basically, it started out as hauling supplies, and then it eventually went into transportation for people to get up here for the mountain houses.
They knew the big business was going to be passengers, because the resorts, you had the Catskill Mountain House, you had the Hotel Catskill, and the Laurel House, the three big ones. But then you had all the other smaller hotels and boarding houses, not only in Hunter, Tannersville, Haines Falls, but also Windham, Ashland, Jewett, Lexington, all the other mountaintop towns. They were not connected by rail to the Hunter station, but they had coaches and wagons, and people came and went, bringing produce and bringing products and produce, and also taking delivered goods back for the stores in the area. But the primary revenue came from the passengers, and that was seasonal.
So when, you're talking about horse and buggy stuff, hauling the passengers up, or passengers and then supplies, how difference of that makes with the horse and buggy compared to the rail station? How many, it would take 5 days for someone to reach horse and buggy from Kingston to here, correct? I think 5 days. Well, that was.
I don't know how many days it would take by wagon, but it would take certainly several days.
And with the railroad now built in here, it would bring people in what? How fast did those things go?
From Phoenicia up to here, which was where this railroad originated. Phoenicia up to here was just a matter of, an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
Including stops along the way. 2 miles out of Phoenicia was Chichester. And in Chichester, you had a very large furniture factory called a Schwarzwalder. And he derived his raw materials from the surrounding forest. Schwarzwalder was a big enough operation that we have a picture down at the station in Phoenicia of a train in the 1880s of 42 boxcars of furniture produced in Chichester on its way to Mexico City. It was a huge load. There's an equally large, well, not equally large, a very large train of Christmas trees that were cut in Platte Clove and shipped out of the mountaintop to New York City. Flat cars loaded with Christmas trees bundled.
Yeah. So the Catskills, of course, the railroads played a very critical role, not just for here, but for other places all around the United States East Coast and stuff like that.
Primarily down through the Hudson Valley. Most of the products that came out of the Catskills ultimately ended up in the New York City. You had brick factories along the Hudson River. Bluestone was quarried in the Catskills. There was a bluestone loading yard in the Phoenicia yard. Phoenicia was a fairly large rail yard. There was a bluestone loading facility there where the bluestone that was quarried and used in the city, and it was primarily used for sidewalks, the lintels over doors and windows and masonry structures, stone stoops up to buildings from the street. And the bluestone industry continued until it was supplanted by Portland cement, which was Portland cement was something that the Romans, Portland style cement was something that the Romans had and used. And somewhere in the Middle Ages, the formula for it got lost. It disappeared. And when they found certain limestone deposits in the Hudson Valley, Rosendale limestone in particular, they created something similar to what the Romans had had. It was a much more durable cement and made for a much stronger concrete. And when that happened, they no longer really needed the bluestone because they could cast in place sidewalks, stoops, elements to be used as lintels in construction. So the bluestone business around 1912 basically died out in the Phoenicia or in the Catskills. The other things that the railroad hauled all along the line, both in the Ulster and Delaware, and there was a creamery up here in Hunter. There were creameries where farmers would either put their milk out to be picked up by the railroad from stands next to the track and have it delivered to a creamery, and then the empty cans returned, and the product, the milk products, would then be loaded into refrigerated cars chilled by ice that was harvested along the railroad itself in the winter. And all those dairy products primarily went, again, to New York City. In Edgewood, a man named Ed Fast had a water bottling plant. And this is before the big reservoir system existed, before the Ashokan Reservoir and the Downsville and so forth. They produced bottled water that again went to the city to provide pure drinking water instead of what came out of the reservoirs down there. Lumber, furniture, stone, dairy products, agricultural produce, all went by way of the railroads. And from the mountaintop, mostly what went out of here was the furniture, some dairy products. Most of the dairy product that was produced in Hunter came from local farmers bringing their milk to that creamery. It was Breakstone Creamery. And it was they produced cream, cheeses, and so forth. And that, again, went out of the area. There was, in Hunter also, there was Standard Oil had a facility where they brought in gasoline and kerosene that was used on the mountaintop for automobiles and for lighting and all the uses you would have for that.
So most of the stuff, everything basically went out, and then the tourists came in. That was all that came into the Catskills,
Pretty much,
mostly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. The Hotel Catskill was roughly 1,000 rooms. Mountaintop, or the Catskill Mountain House, was about 500 rooms. So you had a huge number of people coming up here. The railroad hauled in 1913, I think the number was 660-some thousand passengers. About slightly more than half of that came to the mountaintop by way of the railroad up through Stony Clove. The Stony Clove Railroad, initially when it was built in 1881, was a narrow gauge railroad. It was 3 feet between the rails, which meant that the locomotives and the rail cars were smaller and lighter and could negotiate the steep grades and the tight curves coming up through Stony Clove. But when the railroad built the narrow gauge, they had in the back of their mind that at some point in the future they would turn it into standard gauge, which meant they could haul larger cars, more cargo, more passengers. And they finally did that in 1899. And one of the primary reasons they did it was George Harding, who had built the Hotel Catskill, was good friends with Thomas Cornell, who owned the railroad. And he put pressure on him to give him a station at what is now South Lake. It's at the very end of South Lake by the parking area. And you can go there today and see where the station was. And if you follow the trail around the lake, that's actually the roadbed. The roadbed nearest the lake was the one that it was called at that time the Catskill branch of the Stony Clove Railroad. That there's an interesting history to that, because when the Stony Clove and Catskill Mountain Railroad, Catskill branch went to South Lake in 1890, I believe it was. Beach decided he needed a railroad to get his people to the Mountain House because they were coming up by stage. He had built the Otis, which got the people up to the hotel. But once they got to the hotel, there was no connection to Tannersville. So he, rather than compete directly with the Catskill branch of the Ulster and Delaware, arranged a deal with the railroad. They would build an extension of their rail line from Catskill Station at the south end of South Lake to the Otis Station at the Catskill Mountain House. And they would haul his passengers as well. In 1899, when the Catskill branch was standard gauged, that narrow gauge connection, that 1 mile narrow gauge connection, no longer could function. So, and the Samuel Kuykendall, Thomas Cornell's son-in-law, who is now in charge, said, we're not going to move your cars anymore. So that relationship ended. That left Charles Beach at the Mountain House with the option of either not having rail service or extending his own railroad to Tannersville, which in fact he did. So you had two competing railroads, and if you go to the top of Catskill Falls, where the Laurel House was, you can see the abutments of the bridges for both rail lines within about 100 feet of one another. They came quite close to one another, and they did compete, although for the Catskill and Tannersville branch that Beach built, not very successfully. He basically had to subsidize that railroad with the monies from his Catskill Mountain Railroad from Catskill Point to Palinville.
Interesting. That's
by
like crazy stuff.
That went away.
And Paul, that was my question. I kind of wondered, with all the other land in the Hudson Valley area, Dutchess County, Putnam County, they were building the railroads up here in the Catskills in presumably more difficult conditions, mountainous, tight corners and whatnot. And to what extent was the tourism industry and the revenue from it a factor in getting the railroads up here when they came up here versus if there wasn't a tourism industry up here? Because you told us that Beach went to great lengths to build railroads to get people to his hotel. So to what extent did having tourists up here prompt the development of the railroads up here? Was it a big factor, a minor factor?
It was a primary for the Catskill and the Stony Clove and Catskill Mountain Railroad, which was a branch that came up from Phoenicia to Catskill Junction. That was the primary reason. The directors of the Ulster and Delaware looked at it and said, there's a huge passenger opportunity up there, because there was no rail connection at that point. So they realized that they could definitely do well. Mm-hmm. Because at that point, you had the Catskill Mountain House and the Laurel House as the two big attractions. And then Harding built the Hotel Catskill, and that provided almost twice as many guest rooms. So yeah, it was a big factor.
And I think the other thing that's remarkable about that is, so tourism in itself is a huge magnet to get these railroads built. But as I understand it, the tourism was seasonal. It's not like people were coming up here year round back then.
Right.
So they just had a few months to make their money off the tourists.
Yeah, basically the summer, late spring through early fall.
Yeah.
What was the cost of coming up from
that's
point A to point B? It was like $1, wasn't it?
It wasn't much. I mean, in our terms, no, it was pennies. But
one of the things I've always wondered, Paul, and maybe you can answer this, is if I'm living in Manhattan or Brooklyn in, say, 1899, 1905, and I want to come up to the Catskills via train.
Okay.
What time of day do I leave, let's say on a Friday, and when do I get here? Do I get here Friday night? Do I get here Saturday morning? Do I get here the following week? How long is it taking me? Once all the train network is established, what is it like? What is the ride up from Penn or Grand Central like?
Well, if you came up the East Shore, there were no bridges across at that point. So you came across from the East Shore to Catskill,
so I'm taking a
or
ferry.
to Kingston by ferry,
Okay.
right? But if you came up the West Shore, if you're coming out of the city, you would have taken the ferry across to Weehawken, boarded the train in Weehawken, come up to Kingston, and at one time, before they built the before they made standard gauge, the gauge coming up to the mountains, you would come up to Kingston by train, into Phoenicia on the same train. At Phoenicia, you would get off and board the narrow gauge train along with your baggage, and then come up by narrow gauge to the mountain. In 1899, when they standard gauged, that was no longer necessary. You could come up by train to Phoenicia, and simply all they would do is switch those passenger cars that were going up the mountain onto another track and bring them up. So you never actually had to get off the train at all. The trip from New York City to the mountaintop, they had one train called the Rip Van Winkle Flyer, which was the fastest one, and they had Pullman cars on it. But I think the trip was about, and I'm not exact on this, but about 4 or 5 hours total trip.
So that's
which is
maybe,
not too bad.
Yeah, is that about 3 times longer than I would say by car? Danny, can you vouch for that?
I was going to say.
About 3 hours by car?
Yeah.
Going, Rose, how fast is he going? Is that? Yeah, okay. Yeah, good sidekick there. All right.
The other thing with the Ulster and Delaware, there was one stretch between Phoenicia and Kingston where they could get up to 60 miles an hour. But that was the only stretch on the railroad where they could do that. Beyond Phoenicia, they were more in the 30 mile an hour range.
Because how windy and hilly it was?
That primarily, yeah, and track conditions had a lot to do with it. When this station was built, this was built in 1913. The reason this was built, and Dee Dee alluded to this earlier, by 1913, they were seeing about 40 trains a day coming through Haines Falls.
40 trains a day?
40 trains a day. Wow. And at that time, if you know where the location, if you go out of here, down the dip and up, where North Lake Road comes in, all right, the railroad station was just to the south of the road, and it crossed over where Rory France has his automobile business there. When the trains pulled in, they blocked what is now Route 23A. So you got 40 trains a day blocking that road. Mm-hmm. That's pretty intense. So the push by both the locals and the state was to move that station. So they built this station to replace that one. This is about a quarter mile away from that one. Now, the mountaintop railroads, by the end of the First World War, during the First World War, the U.S. Railroad Administration took over the railroads and regulated them. And one of the consequences of that was a lot of money was not allocated for maintenance and upkeep. So by the time the railroads were turned back over to their owners, most of them were in serious state of disrepair, in need of restoration and repair. And that included the Ulster and Delaware and its branches up here. That expense and the fact that in 1923 the directors of the railroad could kind of see the handwriting on the wall, the impact of the automobile and trucks and improved roads on railway operations, led the directors of the Ulster and Delaware to divide up amongst those 18 people all the dividends and whatever surplus monies the railroad had, and basically bankrupted the railroad. By 1932, the railroad was put into receivership, and the ICC, the Interstate Commerce Commission, was looking for somebody to take over the railroad. New York Central was building its system, and they were looking to acquire a number of railroads out in the Midwest. And in order to acquire those, the ICC said, if you want those, you're going to have to take the Ulster and Delaware. So in 1932, the Ulster and Delaware Railroad became the New York Central Catskill Mountain Division. And it stayed that way up until it was taken over by
Conrail.
Conrail ultimately,
Yeah.
Penn Central before that, and then Conrail. In 1976, that was the last train on the railroad ran from Kingston to Stamford, which was at that point the end of the line. The branch up here had been abandoned in 1940. When the New York Central took over in 32, they didn't really want this. They operated it for a few years, and by 1937, 38, they were trying to get rid of it. The only way they could get rid of it is if it proved to be a losing operation. And they put some money into it. They upgraded some of the rails. They continued to lose money. They cut back on the service, and by 1939, the ICC said they could abandon the railroad. In 1940, they started at Haynes Falls at Catskill Station and picked up the tracks all the way down to Phoenicia. There are a lot of photographs of them taking the bridges down. I think there were something like 60 bridges they took down from that short distance.
And that time, they were convinced that trucks could haul more and stuff like that than trains
Trucks
could.
were taking over a lot of it, yeah, and people were not obliged to go where the railroad resorts were. They could get in the car and go somewhere else. So these places all started to dry up as well, all the resorts and boarding houses. So the mountaintop operation ceased after 1940. There was no longer anything going on. If I lead a hike for the Mountaintop Historical Society every year, starting at the site of Catskill Junction, which is now private property, but the owner gives us permission to go there. So the house actually sits where the little station was on that site. And I lead a hike into the woods to the south to his property line. And along the way, there are a number of ties still in place. You can see where the sidings were. It's getting harder and harder as the ties disappear, but you can trace the line of the right-of-way. And beyond his house, going in this direction, we go as far as where the what was called the Light Dam Bridge was, where it crosses the Scarry. There's the remnants of the bridge, the abutments, and so forth, and some evidence of the power project that was there, the electrical generating plant. So it's an interesting hike. We do it in October and have pretty good turnout. We usually have about 20 people or so, which is about right to manage it.
Have to join that sometime and get a lot more
Yeah,
history.
it's a good hike. There's a lot of evidence there to see what was. And then there's a new trail that's opened up from Ski Bowl Road to 214. That's also still got a fair number of ties on it. And again, you can get a nice feel for where the railroad was. In the wintertime, if you drive through Stony Clove, the snow actually shows the roadbed along the hill. And if you drive up Stony Clove Notch and down the other side, well, driving up from this side, you can see where the railroad was on what would be the east side of 214 to the point where it crossed the railroad. And it crossed twice up in the very top of the notch. And the reason is there's only about a 60-foot wide path through the notch. So you had a road, the old mountain wagon road, and you had the railroad coming through that notch. And the railroad had two tracks. There was a passing siding where trains in opposite directions could pass one another. And then you had the wagon road. So it was very narrow. But when you're in that spot, particularly in the winter, the snow makes it easy to pick out the old road, wagon road, and where the right-of-way for the railroad was. At the very top of the notch, the railroad is underneath the road. It's all buried under there, but you can see it all the way down, pretty much all the way down through Stony Clove to Chichester. You can see the right-of-way.
Trust me, there's a few people in this room that have checked out those tracks pretty closely.
Yeah,
Definitely. I have. Yeah, it's a really interesting spot.
The difficulty of that route was that the grade was very steep. A typical grade is around 1.5%. That route got up almost to a 9% grade, which means on 100 feet of track, the grade was 4 feet higher at the end than it was at the beginning. That's a very steep grade for a locomotive. You begin to lose traction, and if there are wet leaves on it, you're really going to lose traction. So coming up from Phoenicia, it would take 2 locomotives to get up, sometimes 3, to pull 7 of what became known as heavyweight passenger cars, the more modern passenger cars in the early 1900s. Going back from Phoenicia, or from Catskill Junction up Stony Clove, took 2 lead locomotives and 1 pushing to get those same cars up there. It was that steep.
Crazy. Yeah, as you drive up there, you can definitely tell that this took a lot of power to get trains up there, especially. Yeah. So, Paul, last question with your intertwining with the Empire State Railway Museum. What do you find like difficult to preserve with the railroad history in the Catskills? Not just the Catskills, but all over.
The common problem for all of the railroad museums, for museums in general, but certainly for railroad museums, is aging out of the people who were involved. Those of us who are old enough, I'm 83 years old. We've got 3 members on our board who are 83. That's a board of 9 people. The youngest is 29. Everybody else is in their 60s. So maintaining a board to operate the museum becomes difficult as we get older. And getting younger people involved is difficult because people's lives these days are not what they once were. Both partners in marriages tend to work. So getting free time to devote to something like basically what's a hobby, very difficult. We get, at Phoenicia Station, we have enough property there that we lease out a portion of it to a group called Rail Explorers. And they have pedal bikes that ride the rails.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a great ride. We just did it out in Cooperstown. They have another branch out in Cooperstown. They provide a good bit of our income in the course of a year from that lease. The other monies that we generate come from memberships and donations. And because they're on our property, we get a fair number of visitors on weekends when we're open through the museum. And a lot of those people are generous enough. They leave donations. We don't ask for admission. We do ask for donations. The museum has come a long ways in the past few years. It used to be more of an attic full of stuff. Now it's been cleaned out and proper displays have been created. We have a car barn in which we do our rail car restorations. It's a 100-foot long barn. We've got a steam locomotive in there that we're restoring. It was built in 1910. It's a pretty good antique on its own. Most of our cars, nothing is newer than 1944. We have a caboose there that's a walk-through self-guided exhibit. You go in one end and out the other, and everything is described. People don't know what cabooses were all about, but this gives you a good understanding of the functions of a caboose.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again for joining us up here, and check out, we'll have them in the show notes and stuff like that.
I would invite you to come down and do a broadcast from the museum.
Well, hell yeah.
When's the next train coming through town?
Yeah.
We'll be on it.
When's the next train coming? Nice.
By all means,
40 a day.
I would really like to have you come down and do it.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So we'll schedule something.
Okay.
Excellent.
Live from the caboose.
Yeah, live.
You could do
I don't think we'll fit a lot of people in there, so.
Couldn't get a lot of people in, but
Yeah, we'll figure something out. We'll be on top of it, and
it
we'll
does
do like
sleep 7.
Oh, sleep 7. Those come all right. Cool. Excellent. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Let's get Bob up here for. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. All right, Tad, you're going to take this one away. I said you're going to take this one away.
Bob?
Yeah, Bob.
These are all your questions. I just have one at the end.
Yeah, go ahead. You can do whatever you want.
Okay. Well, you want me to go right to my question? You ready for the?
What's
What?
No, just ask him. So Bob, you're chief archivist of the Mountaintop Historical Society, right? All right. So how about you explain that? What's a chief archivist do?
How do I?
How to explain it? What do you do?
Well, we I guess okay. We not so much. I mean, this is saying that I'm probably amazed at all I find in there. I think the biggest amazement is finding new things. I'm looking at the questions that were suggested. I'm trying to go. First of all, I have to say that the people who talked already hit an awful lot of the things that I was going to say. so that you know that to start with.
Why don't I give you a little boost, Bob? And what I wanted to know, based upon what I saw online and what Stosh is asking you, if I were to come here because I wanted to do some type of research, you have records here for me to look at?
We do. We have. First of all of the items that we have, not all, but many of the items that we have are cataloged, and they're on we're using a program called Past Perfect. And if you have an interest of any particular thing, you say Otis Elevating Railway, it would list all the things we have from many postcards, books, and occasionally one of the questions that was asked, what has amazed me about it, and I looked at that question. I'm saying, I don't know that I'm amazed by anything that I find in the archives, but I am amazed when I discover something outside for the first time, or if I find something that relates to the people who rode the Otis. I came across a postcard of the Otis, looking at the Otis from down below, and you can see the cut up the mountain, which anybody that drives along the road between Catskill and the mountaintop is going to see the scar cut in the side of the mountain. And many people don't know what it is, but those who do, it is where the Otis went. And Titus and I climbed that a number of times, or one time actually, once, and we got to the place where they had a trestle, and we were going to go over the trestle, and we looked up and said, "No, I'm not going to. It may be concrete, but I'm not going to climb up there and walk where the train went." But as we were walking along, we did notice that we took a side trip to get around it, and we did run into a bear. So it's that one excitement was replaced by another. But this postcard has 2 paragraphs in it. The first one's in German. Anyone read German? Hope not. At least because, but in any case, the second paragraph describes this, the woman describes going up, and let me read it to you. She says, "It's like riding up to the moon to make this trip, going up backwards by cable in a car carrying 75 people." Now, the U&D is wonderful. It was probably quicker. The Otis, if you were going to come up from by the Otis, you might take another railroad partway, but you could take the Hudson River Day Line, or you could take a night boat, and the night boats would come up and drop you in Catskill at Catskill Point. You could get on the Catskill, and you could get on the Beaches Road to Palinville. Just before you get into Palinville, you could get off and you could get on the Otis, and as this woman did, you could come up that way, and that had to be an attraction, that in itself, that you're going to go up the mountain. Now, I had never ridden the Otis. I graduated high school in 1963. That was Newburgh Free Academy, and I walked down Broadway with some friends, and we looked across the Hudson, and there on the other side of the river, going up the mountain to a dance hall at the top of Mount Beacon, was the same kind of railroad. In fact, built by the Otis Company. One of us said, "Have you ever done that?" I said, "No, I've never done it." I said, "Well, what time is it?" "We have time." We just walk down to the river, get on the Newburgh Beacon ferry, go across the ferry, and walk through Beacon. It's not that big a town, and get on that Otis and go up. And we did. And it's just as she described it. You would sit down on this bench, and you'd be looking up at the sky. And as the train came up, as the train moved up the hill, you straightened out, and you could look down at the Hudson, and I could look over to Newburgh. I could see the town I lived in for years, and get up to the mountaintop, that mountaintop. So the Otis was certainly something very different from what you would experience at the Mountain House, at the Hotel Catskill, and I'm saying Catskill. Why am I saying Catskill? Because George Harding wanted us to say Catskill. He promoted that as the pronunciation. And if you look at the various things around that are related to it, the spellings of them very often are spelled in such a way that you would pronounce it Catskill, not Catskill.
It's like Cauter. There was Catskill Clove. It used to be in the old.
Yes, that's why I'm saying Catskill Clove. I Justine drummed that into my head.
So what was his reasoning for wanting people to pronounce it that way? Was it some marketing?
Because I believe that it was from the Dutch, and I think the KAA in Dutch would make Catskill the pronunciation.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So when did the Otis last operate?
The Otis last operated. Now I'm going to call on Paul. 1918. Okay.
So if we can step back to what you started telling us about the archives, they're cataloged. You have a program. Is that web enabled? Can I access it online, or do I have to physically?
At the present time, no. So we're talking about that. The software we use is called Past Perfect. It does have a subscription version. We have the old-fashioned way where you buy it and you own it until such time as. So we are looking at the possibility of moving to an online system, and even if we do, it's going to be a while before everything that we have is in a format that it can be used, and that it can be used online. That you can find everything that's in our collection online. Mm-hmm. That's under discussion, at least in my mind. in my mind's eye.
Yeah. But not in your checkbook.
Not in my check. Well,
Gotcha.
it probably is not. It's probably not that much more expensive than what we have now. Well, we're not paying anything for it now, but it will have certain advantages. It would be possible. It's not going to be possible to take something that we've been given and enter it from your bedroom at home. You pretty much have to have the material there, and then to figure out where it's going to go, because everything, there's no sense cataloging it unless you have cataloged it in such a way that you can reach out and find the thing you're looking at. Because
pull it up.
Yeah, you have to be able to pull it up, because there are things, no matter what you're looking at, there are things in the real object that you don't have in a photograph of it. With the postcards, we have a lot of postcards, but they're all in books where the front and back, just turn the page and you can see the back, because there's information like this is a classic little description that brings to life what it would be like going up on the Otis Elevating Railway. We were talking about about Rip's Retreat. That little railroad at Rip's Retreat. Actually, I told Michael Kudish where that was. He missed it in his first in the first version of one of his books, and he and I walked that around and found where the Otis went. Not the Otis Ramage, where the Huckleberry, they called it the Huckleberry Railroad there. That still can be found. You can find the berm that the train rode on. So finding little discoveries like that. When the Otis went up from Bogart Road up to the mountaintop just below the Pine Orchard site of the Catskill Mountain House, the earlier descriptions described how the stagecoach would come up the mountain and it would make this big turn right near the top, and you're almost directly underneath the mountain house. And if you walked it today, that's not going to happen. Well, why not? Well, if you look around and play around with and try to just get out there and actually hike it and look at it, you're going to say, "Oh, this turn that they describe in the earlier books on the area is much closer, much further away." Why? Because the Otis line came through and cut that road off. But we can find where it was cut off. We can find where it would have rejoined. And you find those things out not by looking at pictures of it, you find it out by going out there and searching and looking for it. We did a hike the other day. We explored what was called the Circuit of South Mountains. Now that was a trail around the northernmost branch of South Mountain, starting at the Mountain House site and going through something called Pudding Stone Hall, going next to something called Druid Rocks, continuing around and eventually getting up to the Boulder Rock. Okay? You learn things by doing that, by getting out there and seeing it, and you like the outdoors, obviously.
A little bit.
Okay? And it means something to get out there and see it, and when you see something...
Mention the remains of the water pipes and the tower and the...
Oh, yes. And going through there, you see, as you're working your way towards what they called, and one author's called it the lemon squeezer, others called it the second ledge on South Mountain.
As you're approaching that, there are big pipes coming down. Where were they coming from? The remains of a water tank that was on the ground at the top of the second ledge, probably had to do with fire suppression at the Catskill Mountain House.
Interesting. So, when you're talking about the area, like the South Mountain area, stuff like that, and the Otis Railway, how long is it from the bottom of the Otis Railway up to the Mountain House? It was like 1.1 miles, right?
I believe someone said it was about the train. Now, how this train worked was the train was not a cable car hanging from a cable. It was riding along a rail bed, and it had there were two cars. One went on. I'm making. This is not a video thing, right? We're gonna for the people who are listening. My fingers are going around in a big circle now in front of me. The cable that pulled the one from the bottom up was rolling one way, and the other one that was going down was going the other way. And one was clockwise at the moment, and the other was counterclockwise. And the actual weights of the car helped make it easier to get the one that was going up because you had the counterweight of that. So, yes, and now I was going back to one of the things we did on that hike just a while ago was we went out to Boulder Rock. Well, somebody, actually it was Scott Coster, who's one of our board members, but he's from Michigan. He grew up in Poughkeepsie and fell in love with the Catskills, and he still loves it now that he's out in Michigan. Found a photo album of 3 or 4 girls who worked in 1925, 100 years ago. 1925, these 17, 18, maybe one was as young as 16-year-old girls were working at the Catskill Mountain House. Now, it's rare for us to, we hear about the owners of the Catskill Mountain House. We hear about George Harding. We hear about even George Harding's relationships with Abraham Lincoln. He hired Abraham Lincoln, and then he found somebody who he thought could do the job better. In fact, Lincoln, if you read Doris Kearns Goodwin's book on A Team of Rivals, the Team of Rivals is Lincoln's cabinet. Lincoln chose only people who would challenge him, only people who would give him advice that maybe was what he didn't agree on, at least not initially. But if he found something that he thought they were right, he would change his mind. So Doris Kearns Goodwin's, which I highly recommend, Harding is mentioned in there in a few times. 1, because he hired Lincoln, and 2, because and I'm sorry, but I don't remember all these names, the lawyer that he hired to replace Lincoln's position, Lincoln sat and watched him work. He watched him as the trial was developing. And when they asked Lincoln what he thought about everything, he said, where are you going to do now? He said, I'm going back to my hometown and I'm going to study law. And he hired that lawyer who opposed him, or not opposed him, but who he found challenging. He hired him and put him on his presidential cabinet. He formed a cabinet of people who challenged him and who would bring out the best in him, because they were making suggestions that he had to think about. Made him the greatest president we've ever had, to have that kind of approach to things.
Interesting.
And did Lincoln then work in the Catskills? Is that
no. Lincoln. This was held in this was the trial was held in Lincoln's area, but Harding said he made so much money off of one of the trials that Harding had, because he would remember he was a patent lawyer. He made so much money that it was pocket change that built the Hotel Catskill from the work that he did.
Over chicken. I mean, yeah, I would think so.
What a father won't do for his daughters.
I know, right? Especially for food, you gotta.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well,
the
the chicken story is has probably truth in it. Another thing I can mention is now it was George Harding who developed the Catskill, the Hotel Catskill. My wife and I
Falls right there.
were at my wife and I at my 70th birthday. Wow, that was 10 years ago. At my 70th birthday, the kids gave us a night at Mohonk. They knew I loved Mohonk. I graduated from SUNY at New Paltz. We had our freshman orientation at Mohonk. And taking people on hikes around here, they would say, "Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful to be back when there were hotels like this were actually were available?" And I said, "Well, there is Mohonk. You can go down to Mohonk, and it's certainly worth the trip." So, I was going somewhere with that.
So you're digging through all these photos and stuff like that. What brought you to the railroad kind of foundation of this, of being an archivist? So
the railroad is part of, well, I got involved with the Mountaintop Historical Society not because of the railroads, but because of the hiking. Because one of the people that I knew early on, one of the people who inspired me was one of my students, a student in my physics class who would say things, who would tell me about things related to the mountains, like the Side Hill Gouger. He told me about the Side Hill Gouger. He said the Side Hill Gouger's legs are longer on one side than they are on the other, so it can only go sideways around the mountain. If you see a Side Hill Gouger's tail, you don't have to worry, because you're going to have to run all the way around the whole mountain before he gets to you. But if you see his head, you're dead.
And that just made the price of admission worthwhile today.
Right there.
Because no one here knew that.
Okay, but I know where I was going with the now I know where I was going with Mohonk. Larry Tompkins and I went down to the Barn Museum, went to Mohawk with a lot of these hikes that we would take the Historical Society on. And we went in the Barn Museum, and there's, hanging on the wall, was a wooden walking stick. And we looked at it, and it had a little sticker on it that said Hotel Catskill. So when my wife and I were down there, we went to the Barn Museum, and I approached a man who was working on some of the beautiful outdoor furniture that they have down there. And I said, you know that walking stick with the hook on the top from the Hotel Catskill? He said, "No, that's from Minnewaska." I said, "No, I think it's from." He said, "Well, let's go over and look at it." We walked over and looked at it, and he said, "No, you're right. It's the Hotel Catskill." I said, "If I have a letter printed on Mountaintop Historical Society stationery and ask if you can donate that to the Mountaintop Historical Society because it's more appropriate up there than it is down here." He said, "Well, you're here now." And I have, the only evidence I have that he gave it to us is the photograph that I have of him handing it to me and bringing it up here. Now, why do I mention that? Because we put that on our webpage. And who called? George Harding's great-great-grandson called because he wanted to come up here and see the area, and he wanted to go up to the Hotel Catskill site.
That's why you got to get your stuff online, so you get all these
absolutely
family members of people coming up here and checking them out.
And by the way, I've talked with some of the stuff with those young ladies who worked the Hotel Catskill 100 years ago. Wow. I've looked at so many of their pictures, seeing them climbing the same kinds of places. We had 3 hikers with us. One of them stood at the picture of the girls on the hotel on the Boulder Rock. One of them's climbed to the top. One of them's clinging to the side, and one of them's standing down below. 3 of our hikers thought it would be a great idea if they would do the same thing. If you go on our Facebook page, you'll see the pictures of the girls from 1925. They're a lot younger and a lot prettier than the guys that climbed over. But the guys that were on Boulder Rock are posing the same way that they did 100 years ago, exactly 100 years later. So that's the kind of thing that excites, is to get out there and see the real place where we are, to get a feeling for what, to have when you hear this woman talking about how the excitement of going up backwards up the Otis, those are the kinds of things that excite me.
Fantastic. Can't wait to get this stuff online.
So I'm going to ask Bob my question, but if Bob doesn't know, somebody else does.
Somebody else will.
Just shout it out. So a few of us here have hiked the stretch between Round Top and Catskill High Peak.
Right.
And on our map, there's a reference to the Tory Fort.
Okay, I can tell you where Tory Fort is.
Yes, and that's what we want to. Who here wants to know what the Tory Fort is? Okay.
Okay, I can tell you where Tory Fort is.
Danny's not going to raise his hand for it. Now he's Googling it.
Okay. But I'll tell you.
So
I'll tell you a better
what the
way.
Tory Fort is.
I'll tell you a better way of finding out. First of all, we have a map that has. Oh, I don't have my GPS with me. I have the GPS coordinates for Tory Fort. And I can tell you a little bit of a story about Tory Fort. You're right. See, that's what I'm saying. I love working on the archives. The people who come and work on the archives, we pick up something like this, and you work. You know those old. I mean, you probably don't, but those old word problems in math where if A can do a job in so many things, and B can do it, then how fast are they going to work together? They won't. They'll work much more slowly together because they will just sit and talk. So more gets done at the archives when there's only one person working there, and preferably it's John Curran, not me. One person working there, and he works productively, and then. But he'll pick up something like this. He says, "Wow, did you see this?" And before long, we have a conversation, or somebody else walks in. So Tory Fort.
Yeah,
Back to
we
Tory
want to
Fort.
hear about the Tory
I'm going
Fort.
to okay,
Bob, you're not you don't get to leave until you tell us about.
I'll tell you a couple of things about it. One is I'll tell you the person to talk to. The person to talk to who can get to it blindfolded is his name is tell me.
I know. Brooks.
Ricky Brooks.
Oh,
Ricky
yeah.
Brooks.
Ricky Brooks, yeah.
Ricky Brooks was a student of mine, and one day he said to me, he was in my physics class, the physics class I taught, and he said to me, because he knew I liked hiking and he knew I liked the Catskills, and he said, "You know, Mr. Gildersleeve, my uncle, my great uncle, and I and a couple of others are going to climb Wyndham High Peak. Would you like to come along?" His great uncle was Ed West. Ed West was the superintendent of land acquisition in the Catskills for DEC. And I said, yes, I would love to go. And we went. We climbed it with Ed, Ed was at the time 80 years old, maybe even a little bit longer. How could a guy climb the mountain like that at 80 years old? Oh, well, maybe. So what goes around comes around, they say. So that's how I got involved. That's one of the ways in which I got involved with camping and hiking, and certainly the way I got involved with the Catskills. And it was Ricky, it was Ed, who brought me in because I love the mountains, and
then you went to the
Torrey Fort.
Torrey Fort.
What was Torrey Fort?
I'm thinking Bob doesn't want us to know about the Torrey Fort.
Okay.
It's a big
the charm.
secret.
Well,
There's a lot of misinformation here now.
You might
So
get the idea. You might get the idea that they had something to do with the Revolutionary War, and it was. There was a Mohegan Indian, Native American, who named Joseph Brant, who was educated in Europe, and he was fighting on the side of the British, and the Indians, the Native Americans would, at the desire of the British, would go down in the valley, capture somebody, bring them up to the side of Catskill High Peak at the col between the two, on the south side of the col between the two, and hold them there because they were tired now. They were going to transport them all the way to Fort Niagara, and they would keep them there. They had a hollow dug in the side of the mountain, small hollow. They could fit a few people down in there. They had rocks on the side. They had logs over the top. They had a little opening, and I guess one of the Indians stood above the little opening with his hatchet ready to conk somebody on the head if they tried to get out. And that was the Torrey Fort. It was not what you might picture from a fort. It was a small little thing, just a small place where they could hold people before they moved on to take them up and sell them to the British for ransom. But it's there. It's a campsite, and it was discovered. It was examined by folks from the state. Came down. They dug. They found teacups and various other kinds of things there, and that's what it was. And I mean, even an artist who did something for us when he wanted to illustrate the Torrey Fort, he almost had a moat in front of it. No such thing. It's just a tiny little place. It can be, the best way to get to it is from Black Clove, and I can, as I said, I'll email me and I'll give you the coordinates of it.
Well, I think I've been there before several times. So
okay.
I think I've gone by there, but I haven't I haven't really noticed anything.
Jim Booten took me there the first
time. What I was going to say about Ricky though is I have a photo. Remember, Ricky was a handsome young guy with that, and I was an old man, and I have a picture of him because he worked with his uncle. He helped his uncle survey the trail from the top of the mountain where there's a marker down to Torrey Fort with a whole bunch of different little pinpoints along the way, and he's got the map. It was done as a bicentennial. We're coming up to what was it now? What's the next one? It's the 50th. The bicentennial it was the bicentennial of America. We're 50 years past that.
So 250th.
250th. I know it's 250th, but there's a name for that. In any case, I've got a picture of Ricky with his 1970s hairstyle and a knife in his teeth, sitting in the middle of Torrey Fort. And
you gonna share that sometime?
So there you go. You're going to leave here today, and you know what the Torrey Fort is all about.
Nice.
Yes.
Excellent.
And there's a place on top of on top of Bear's Den called Fort something or another. But it's just somebody's carved the names in for 3 or 4 years or something. It was never a fort. It was never a official campsite or anything else. It was just something that attracts people.
A holding cell.
A holding cell.
Yeah. Dug in the ground.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Bob, thank you for coming on. And once again, keep doing your stuff. Keep passing along this history that we have here, and get that stuff online so I can start reading it. And
Okay.
Scan it. Let me know if I can help you.
And I'm glad we changed. I'm glad I was able to do this off the cuff. You talked about some of the things that excite me. That's what this is all about, though.
It's all off the cuff.
Yeah. This podcast is off the cuff. That's what it's going to be. So we're going to change the name from Inside Line to Off the Cuff.
Okay.
All right. So thanks a lot, Bob.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
As you can hear, that's like 3,000 people. Just to let you know, they're still here. I guess that's a wrap, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And that mic drop right there. Mic drop. Bye, Bob. Thank you for joining us today. Once again, if you've donated, you sponsored anything, thank you guys. If you still listen, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And have a good night. Safe trip home. Thank you for making it. We really love you guys.
Hey everyone, I just want to thank you for listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe and throw down a smooth review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any podcast platform that you use. You can also check daily updates of the podcast, hikes, hiking news, and local news on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the official website of the show. Remember this, you gotta just keep on living in the Catskills, man. Livin.
Wicked.